we begin with the flag salute, and I believe leading us in the salute this morning is Mr. Rockholm.
Join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And that being complete, Supervisor Holmes, we will move on to the statement of meeting procedures. We will do that right now. Thank you.
Welcome to the Placer County Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, May 18th, 2010. Agendas are available on the table in the back of this meeting room. If you are here to speak on an issue not appearing on the agenda, you may do so during the public comment period. There's a 3-minute time limit per speaker. The board is not permitted to take action on items addressed under public comment. When you speak, clearly state your name and address for the record. All items on the agenda will be open for the public to address before final action is taken. There is a 3-minute time limit per speaker, which will be monitored by a timer on the podium. If there is a person speaking on behalf of a group with no other testimony from another member of the group, please identify yourself as such, and your time may be extended at the pleasure of the board. Keep in mind that the chairman has the discretion of limiting the total discussion time on any item. It is requested that all pagers and cell phones be either turned off or put in the silent mode. Thank you for your participation and cooperation.
Thank you, Ann. And Supervisor Montgomery is on her way, just running a little bit late this morning, so she will join us as she makes it here. We will go ahead and take public comment. This is time for members of the public to address the board on any item that's not on our agenda, understanding that the board cannot take any action on any item that is brought up under public comment. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Euler, members of the board, and staff of Placer County. My name is Alex Morolatos, and I'm speaking as chairman of the board of the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association this morning. And I have Ron Trpa, who will join me in just a second. First, let me welcome you to springtime in Lake Tahoe. Clearly, this is actually driving up the valley. This is clearly a destination for all seasons. I'm here today to give you a quick update on the status of the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association. The organization is blessed with a diversified board that is currently engaged in defining a transition for the organization as we seek new leadership. We have gone back to the master plan and we've reaffirmed the organization's mission and its vision. We are in the process of defining the characteristics that will be required to lead the organization forward, and will begin a formal search process in early June for that candidate. And we will be keeping you in the CEO's office abreast of that process as it proceeds. I believe as a result of the exercise that the board is going through, we're going to come up with a series of recommendations on ways to improve the organization that we will be working with the CEO's office on and bringing back to this board. Of the highest priority for the board and for our staff that has taken the organization to the status that it enjoys today, the priority to maintain current operations is very high. The first step the board took to address that priority was to ask Ron Trpa to act as our interim executive director, and we've asked him to spend a few minutes with you to just give you a brief update on the planning process that the organization is going through for current operations. Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Gosh. Good morning, you guys. Nice to see you, bright and early here. We're here on behalf of the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association and the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the people of Eastern Placer County and special districts, other organizations, to welcome you to the 5th district of your great county and the greater North Lake Tahoe area. As Alex said, we are storming along, getting ready to begin our 16th year of partnership with the Board of Supervisors, county staff, and the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association Board of Directors. It's been a great partnership, and we look forward to continuing this to be able to advise you and carry out what projects and other programs that you approve to make the North Lake Tahoe area a much more viable area for the residents that live here as well as the people who visit here. We have, in coming up with the next year's budget, which will be submitted, and then our agreement conversations with the CEO's office beginning, have infrastructure money in place for the Tahoe City Transit Center, the Kings Beach Commercial Core Improvement Area, as well as starting the final leg of construction on the bike trail through Tahoe City, as well as many other projects. In transportation, we've been able to, as a community and a board, say that in addition to the various transportation services and programs we have to enhance the TART baseline system, we are putting about $500,000 forward of TOT to keep the TART baseline program intact now that there has been shortcomings in funds from the state money. We will continue to do that until those monies are restored to whatever level they are restored. And lastly, in our marketing, you'll soon get, if you haven't already, our third quarter report, which shows that lodging, retail, and other visitor services all went up in January, February, and March, which is showing a good sign from the previous year. And we're moving ahead, working toward a great autumn food and wine festival again this coming fall. And as maybe some of you are aware, we are on the verge of it being up to us to lose the opportunity for the AmGem Tour of California Bicycle Festival to begin at Lake Tahoe next year. And it'll begin with the entire first stage being at the lake, and then the second stage taking off and coming toward Nevada City and Auburn. So that's going to be, as you know from your experience with that, just a tremendous opportunity for North Lake Tahoe to have another wonderful festival for residents and visitors alone. So again, we welcome you to be here, and if there's anything else that we can do to make your stay more efficient, remember the word is Ron. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. Thank you, Alex. Good morning, sir.
How are you? My name is Charles Larson. I'm representing the Justice Reform Coalition. And I did live in Roseville until the police department there.
Sir, let me just ask a quick question.
Yes.
Are you here in regard to the public defender contract?
No, I'm not fighting that. I'm giving you a heads up on what's going on with your police departments, judges, district attorney's office, the public defender, and how they're refusing to treat the people the way they're supposed to be treated, how they're lying, how they're stealing evidence out of the lockup, how the judges are refusing to let you present evidence in your cases. They pull you over for one thing, it disappears out of evidence, and then they turn around and tell you, well, we don't need reasonable cause to stop you, and we're not going to allow you, the judge says, I will not allow you to fight this and bring in evidence against it. They've just done this to me, and when did we lose the right to fight our cases? What happened to our police when they steal evidence out of their own lockers? What happened to our judges that all of a sudden tell us that you're not going to bring any evidence to fight this because I won't allow it? You got a serious problem in Placer County and in the other little towns. My town was Roseville. It was still the district attorney of Placer County that did this. They should have thrown the case out. Number one, the judge in the case knew my family. He should have excused himself, and he didn't say nothing about it until after the case. Judge Gibson was totally out of line, shouldn't even be sitting on the court, on the bench. The district attorney sitting there shouldn't even been doing anything. He should have dropped the charges as soon as they found out the slingshot that I was supposedly pulled over for that was hanging on my motorcycle was gone from evidence locker, which we all know the cops stole it and took it home. Who else goes inside the evidence lockers but the police? My public defender wouldn't even go in and get a trail of evidence to find out what happened to it. If you don't do something about these guys, everybody's going to get railroaded in the county, and then it's going to spread everywhere. This is just incomprehensible. I left the county. I packed up and left because they will harass you once it's been done. They've been cruising my house ever since the trial in February, I think it was, or January. Day after day, they drive around my house now, where before that, I hadn't seen but one every 2 to 3 weeks. So you tell me what they're doing. They're not doing their job. They're not doing what the public pays them for. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it to the board's attention. Anybody else wish to address the board on public comment this morning? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on with our agenda. We have a couple of items that we're going to remove from consent this morning. Item number 19, a Health and Human Services item. We have some language that needs to be changed quickly before we take action. Item 23.1, that was a recent add to the consent. We're going to pull off and take 23.1 and 8.1, our department head item, immediately upon taking action on consent. Are there other items that any board members wish to have removed from consent?
Yes, I'd like to have items 15A through E pulled for discussion.
Echo?
That's correct.
And I apologize, I didn't bring a pen this morning. May I borrow your pen? Thank you. Oh, you know what? I have pens in here. Sorry about that. Okay, let me make a note, 15A through E. All right, any other items that anybody wishes to have removed from consent? Seeing none, may I have a motion on the remainder of consent items absent 19, 23.1, 15A through E? Second. My motion, Montgomery, second Rockholm, to approve consent absent those items noted. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we do on consent.
Yes.
Rockholm?
Yes.
Weigand?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Euler?
Aye. Thank you. And it was pointed out to me that I skipped right over committee reports, supervisor committee reports. Any supervisors have anything they'd like to report? I'll start down the left with Supervisor Montgomery.
Yes. I actually am very pleased to report that I am serving on the U.S. Forest Service Resource Advisory Council, which is the council that allocates the Tier 2 funding from our rural schools funding. And I'm most pleased to report that I was actually elected chair of the committee. It is a bi-county committee, equally divided in personnel between Nevada and Placer counties. Placer County has the bulk of the funding associated with the project, and so I think it's going to be very helpful to help protect Placer County's interests and make sure that the projects that do come forward, whether fire/defensible space or watershed, really serve a purpose within the county and have a real nexus to improving all our qualities of life here in the county. So, thank you.
Other supervisor committee reports? Is it your turn this morning? All right, let's go ahead on with those items that were pulled from consent. Let's quickly address the HHS item, and that one was 19. Item number 19.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, item 19 only addresses the way that the item's written in the agenda before your board. The request is to delete the last two sentences from that listing, and sentences currently read, the grant awards are 100% funded through the Placer County Trust for Animals. No county general fund contribution is required. The request is simply delete that. The staff report itself does not include that language, so that would be a minor correction on number 19.
Okay.
You want me to go on to 15?
No. Let's stay there. So then if we are striking the language that says no general fund contribution is required, is there a general fund contribution being made?
No, there is not. There's actually, it's a redundant line. There's a line above that. It's germane to the issue.
I see.
This one is carry over on some other item.
Okay.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Rockholm, second Wygant, to approve item 19. Do we need roll call on each of these after they're polled, or can you just take them? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Thank you. We'll go on to item number 15, A through E, please.
Actually, there's two separate groups here in terms of issues. I believe items 15A through D deal with merit increases. Your board, as you are aware, has been before your board many times on A through D. It is required for the management group that your board concur with the approval of merits. The first four items are that aspect. As also relayed to your board in the past, merit increases for DSA represented or PPO represented employees do not come before your board. So I would suggest if your board wants to take action to look at A and D as one separate group, and then maybe after your board dispenses with that, we can talk about item number E.
Sure. All right, any comments or questions of staff on items 15A through D? If not, do we have a motion to approve items A through D?
Approval? Second.
Motion Wygant, second Holmes. Roll call, please.
Wygant?
Yes.
Rockholm?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
Montgomery?
No?
Euler?
Aye. Thank you. And item 15E.
Item 15E is actually an ordinance that has been requested by the Board of Supervisors to be brought before you. What the effect of this ordinance would do is amend Article 3.04 of Chapter 3 of the Placer County Code, which would suspend step or merit increases for all unclassified employees and classified management employees. This addresses the suspension of merits for somewhere around 200 management employees. Does not affect, because it would require contract adjustments, either Deputy Sheriff's Association or PPO represented individuals. It would only apply to that particular class.
Okay, and let me ask of Supervisor Montgomery, you requested this be polled. Do you have any questions or comments on the item?
Yes, I did. I'd like to get a clarification on the number of employees that this would affect. Mr. Miller says it would be around 200 employees. Is this just the step, otherwise known as merit increases, or are these longevity increases as well? Because my understanding was it would affect substantially fewer than that if it were just the step or merit increases.
When I mentioned I was speaking to the entire class rather than the number of employees. In your staff report, Josh, page 272 under fiscal impact, let me just read that. I can't remember the numbers in any detail. The overall class affected is, again, 200 employees. But at this next year, pursuant to personnel, there's about 37 employees, 13 unclassified, 24 classified within that group that would be not receiving merit increases. Those would be the only ones eligible, 37. The total savings in fiscal year 2010-11 are projected $143,000, and then on up to slightly less than $100,000 for the next fiscal year if that happened again. So this deals with just suspension of merit increases. So obviously if there's about 200 employees in this group, there are only 37 of the 200 that would be eligible for a merit increase this next fiscal year from July 1 to June 30th or thereabouts, depending upon the pay period.
Okay, and then just to be clear on this, these are just a suspension. This is not, these would, in other words, should the economic health of the county recover, would we be able to go back and retroactively award these merit increases as we've done in the past for other merit increases?
Well, we haven't retroactively approved any merit increases in the past, but these are actually fully budgeted for at this time. You would be suspending the payment of these. I guess I'd have to leave it to a future board action, however you define to otherwise make adjustments.
Why don't, since we are going to be hearing some more personnel-related things at our next board meeting on the 8th, based on some action that Tony has yet to report out, why don't we just continue this item over to the 8th and take it up in the larger context of some of our, any objection by any board members to doing that? Tom, would that meet with your?
That would be
okay.
Yes.
All right, we'll just go ahead and continue this item over to the 8th.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right, having addressed all but the one, we'll get to Janine's item in just a second. Why don't we quickly, Tony, go ahead and have you report out from closed session yesterday?
Yeah, the board, at the end of yesterday's session, went into closed session. We anticipated discussing two litigation matters. In fact, we did not get an opportunity to discuss those two cases, and we will discuss them sometime today during a future closed session this morning. But while we were there, we did discuss labor discussions with the board. The labor representatives working on behalf of the board met and talked extensively with the board and received direction from the board with regards to both Deputy Sheriff's Association discussions, which have commenced, and ongoing discussions with PPEO. That closes that report.
Thank you very much, Tony. All right, jumping back to items that were pulled from consent, the last one that we pulled was 23.1, and that was a treasurer tax collector item. Go ahead and let Tom comment on that quickly, and then we'll turn it over to our treasurer tax collector.
Yes, on 23.1, what you have is, again, that was an agenda item prepared after the bulk of the rest of those distributed and noticed on Friday. We do have an amendment to that consent item. You received today a revised resolution that includes a number of other items on the resolution, and that replaces pages in your existing timed item, consent item that start on page 4, and I'm referring for the board's purposes. This document here that you received with your package, but again, the handout that you received this morning that has additional items listed on it replace number 4 in that and a couple of pages that follow. So staff is recommending you would accept that adjustment on the consent item that's 23.1.
Perfect. And Janine, do you have any comments on just the consent item before we get to your department head item?
I don't, unless you have questions. I can go through it at the board's pleasure, whatever you would like.
Members have any questions on the substitution made on item 23.1? And I don't see any. Do I have a motion to approve? Second. Motion by Montgomery, second Rockholm to approve 23.1. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed? None. Thank you. All right, we'll move into department head items. We'll start with item 8.1. Since Janine's already got at the mic, we'll let her go.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I wanted to give you a update on the Empower Placer AB 811 program. Attached to the staff memo is some program statistics. I won't belabor what's there other than to say that we have received our 100th application last week, and the total amount of the applications, which is not noted there, received to date is $3.85 million. So there's been a fantastic response to the program, and we're just chugging along. So the item that you approved just a moment ago has to do with in keeping with best practices for the program, and we just stand vigilant on keeping an eye on what we need to do to keep our program in good standing and have it operating effectively and efficiently. So with that, unless there are any questions, I just wanted to give that brief update to the board.
Any questions of Janine? Janine, what are the, so average application, about $30,000. The measures?
Yes, average residential is about $30,000. We have a couple of large applications on the commercial that just came in. They're under the $500,000 threshold that require the board approval, but they're like $386,000 for one of them. We're seeing things like cool roofs and retrofitting high-efficiency HVAC systems for commercial. So we're seeing windows, HVAC. So there's a broad spectrum of applications coming in for various retrofitting.
Very nice. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that as time goes on, based on questions that I receive from the board, we'll continue to refine and update and improve this ongoing report to the board that we'll be providing you periodically.
That's great. That's great. The cooperative advertising seems to be taking. I'm hearing a number of ads on the radio that contractors are paying for, but that are mentioning the Empower program and promoting the Empower program as well.
Right, and we're actually looking to increase that effort. What we're working on right now is where we will have a variety of promotional camera-ready artwork available to the contractors. we will ask them, they will actually send us a request through our website and agree to using those materials pursuant to our protocols, and that's what we're doing right now, is making sure that our protocols are in place so that we don't have misleading advertising associated with our logo and our artwork. And then once they sign off on that agreement, we will have a variety of artwork where they can take the logo, the program logo, and put it on their promotional materials, or we will have camera-ready artwork with our promotional materials, and they can put their logo on it, and then they can take that to the printer of their choice and have as many copies of it made as possible. So most of it has to do just with standards on how that artwork is used. It's not really very constraining.
Questions by other board members? Yes, Supervisor Rockham.
I had a comment. I've said this before, but thank you for your diligence on this and your vigilance and keeping us apprised. And I think it's going to work out to be a great program thanks to your efforts.
We're getting a great response. We have the 100 applications, and those are the first applications through the system, so we're working on trying to make our processes as efficient and responsive as possible for those applicants. Thank you, Rocky. Thank you very much.
Very nice. All right, this was just an informational item, no actions required by the board, so if there are no other comments, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, continuing with department head items, let's go ahead with department head item number 3, Community Development Resource Agency Planning Biomass Program. Mr. Story is here with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Honorable. Good morning, Honorable.
Yeah, it's on. We hear you.
Honorable board members and management.
Now you hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. Pleasure to be here in a beautiful area. What I'd like to do today is update you. I have 3 items, one of which stays the same. The other 2 are a little bit different, which I'll go over and then give you a little bit of update of where we are in the process. First up, item A is to accept the Placer County Air Pollution Control District Clean Air Grants. We have 3 separate Tahoe area grants that we were awarded this year, and we have some interesting partners in those. The first one is $40,000 to work with the United States Forest Service here in the basin to remove biomass and create energy out of it, and they are matching with approximately $35,000. The second is a $35,000 grant to work with the California Tahoe Conservancy and the California State Parks to begin removing their material off their lands starting this year, and they are matching with $4,950 each. The California budget is tough these days, so that's what we were able to get, and it's okay. It's going to be a very efficient operation, and they aren't as large as the Forest Service. And then $22,000 to work with the community members in the Tahoe region, and it's larger than just the basin. It also includes where we are here and out to the Truckee area. And we're going to match that with a little bit of HR 2389 trust fund dollars, $10,000, which will be coming before you on June 8th. The contracts for all of the others will be coming, and we will not begin work until all those have reached us. A little bit about what's been, and today we'd like to request for your approval and signature of the chairman for those grants. A little bit about what we've done in the past working with the Forest Service. We did a couple of unique projects. The first one is the Rubicon Mckinney Trail. If any of you have ever been on that, it's the pathway to the Sierras for a lot of people, a lot of four-wheel drive vehicles. Very dangerous position they were in last year. A lot of material on the ground, a lot of material next to the road. It was a high priority fire danger. We had a contract with the Forest Service using some of our grant funds and some of their contract. The regulations on the land, quite interesting. We had to use a lot of non-standard techniques, i.e. we had to use a lot of hand crew equipment, meaning people to carry the stuff. We had to back a trailer in, we had to back a truck in and move it. We were fortunate JMA Ventures supported our effort and gave us homewood to do all of the grinding at free of charge. We hired local contractors, and we exceeded all the Forest Service expectations. And we did about 10 acres is all, but you'll see how important it was. And these are just some pictures of the type of materials that were on the ground. You've seen these charts before. This is simply a depiction of the amount you see in the orange bars, which is the amount of air pollution that would have gone into the basin air if those had been allowed to burn, which is what they were going to do. The Forest Service was going to burn them this year. You can see we saved several tons of PM10 NOx, CO, VOCs, and 78 tons of carbon. The interesting factor is we did, and if you look, I don't know if the laser is working, no, apparently not. Just take one, the PM10, which is particulate matter of 10 microns. If you pile burn it, you get the large orange bar. If you burn it through where we did in Loyalton, you get a 96% reduction. And we took it a little further. Should we be fortunate enough to build our project in Kings Beach, it would actually reduce it down another percent, down to 97%. And you can see that across the board. This was a very small project, but we began to see further increases by having a small biomass plant in the Tahoe Basin, which I'll talk about here in a minute. So that was the Rubicon. The Crag project was actually very large. It was probably 7 or 8 large piles of logs and slash material above Tahoe City, which again was scheduled to be burned this winter, would have produced a lot of it, which I'll go into the next one. Normal standard regulations were on that land, which meant we were able to use equipment and get it off much more efficiently, be more effective in our process. We did about 120 acres of biomass. Again, it would have been a huge open burning. Both of these will have reports coming out. I've got to go through the Forest Service, and then I'll bring it back to the board with reports. This, again, are the numbers for that one, and then they just get larger. You know, PM10 this time is 14 tons. Carbon saved, 712 tons. So you see, even that as a treatment is a significant factor for air pollution and deposition into the lake for the Tahoe Basin. We will be doing more of these projects with that new contract this year. I'm working with the Forest Service now to schedule those on what we can get accomplished up here. The last one is the community project, which we've been doing for a number of years up here, which is simply boxes into community events. We pile regionally. We allow different organizations to bring their material there, and then we grind it, haul it, remove it. Again, very efficient way. Our partners in that are the local TTSD at the Eastern Regional Landfill helps us out with that, as well as some local contractors that pull that material out. And again, here's just a calculation. That was about 7 tons of PM tons. So you see that we're making headway in this. The economics are coming in nicely as we develop more through the process of the biomass facility. You will see those economics, and we will show you how that works. But it's all looking very good. The next item, which is item B, originally was to accept the Department of Energy Phase 2 Stage 1 grant. A little bit of a twist. DOE called me yesterday and explained they have processes they have to go through, and it didn't get all the way through. The letter will be forthcoming hopefully in the next week or so. So what I'd like to do, I'll talk to you about what we have going on, and then the request would be that you could accept this item contingent upon the letter coming in and have the board chairman sign at that point. And that goes for both of the next 2 items because they are interrelated. It is the funding for the next item after this. As you know, Placer County was awarded a $1.427250 grant. Senator Feinstein, with her strong support, allowed us to get that from the Department of Energy. The Stage 1, and the numbers may slightly change. That's what they're looking at, is the numbers and the matching, but approximately $750,000. And our team matching would be of a 20% variety, which would be approximately $187,500 in-kind value between ourselves and our partners. Our major partner being our private partner would have a lion's share of that. Again, now the request would be to allow the board to sign it once it comes in. And then the Stage 2, which I'm not asking you to deal with today, that is the 50% match, and that is once we achieve land use approval and air permitting, and that could be sometime in late 2011. We would bring that item back to the board, in which case we would need to match that. That's where our private partner steps up. They would be matching that with the value of the land, should we be allowed to build on that site, plus cash and in-kind at that point. This item, again, being asked to have you approve, subject to the letter coming in, which is approval of joint TRPA Placer County contract for the environmental review process, which we hope to begin here shortly. And again, this is to support the full EIR EIS environmental review desired for a biomass facility here in the basin. At this point, we have a joint contract with TRPA PA, Placer County, and Ascent Environmental for a not to exceed of $290,840 to, again, complete all that required environmental work, which will take place up here in the basin, a lot of community events, a lot of scoping events, which I'll go into in a minute. All funds for that will be paid for by that DOE grant when the letter comes in and you do approve that. Again, we're not requesting the approval and signature, but merely when it comes in. A little bit about the project funding to date, just as a reminder to the board. In 2007, the Forest Service in Placer County funded a preliminary feasibility study, which came back with good news. We could build this, could meet the requirements. In 2008, we received a congressionally directed funding from Congressman Doolittle at the time to get this facility concept through the development phase. We are about two-thirds of the way through that with the original $500K and some matching funds from us. Things are coming in nicely. We've got the technology that will work and meet all of the regulations. We're now beginning to refine all that. In 2009 and 2010, Senator Feinstein, as I said earlier, helped us get some more money. The $1.5 million is what we discussed here a minute ago. There is another additional $1 million that we do have, which would require a match, which I'll bring back to you when we have the ability to spend it, which is to help purchase the equipment. So that's probably more like in early 2012. We would bring that before your board. And then we are contributing a significant amount of project support through the people and organizations. We've now expanded that. We have support from Health and Human Services, from all of CEDRA, from facilities, from legal, you name the department, and they're helping out in this cause to get this built. And then Nevada Energy and eventually Calpico, once the sale goes through, will both be our partners, and they are contributing today with their knowledge and their in-kind work, but at some point they will be contributing dollars to this project. A little bit about the facility, recent team activities. We have a preliminary facilities design drawings which have been completed, and we're doing some minor modifications to those, which are looking real good. They fit on the piece of property nicely. We've held meetings with TRPA and agreed to joint work through all of the processes through here, so that will save us time, money, and more importantly, the ability to get on agendas and get things approved in the right manner so that we can move this project forward. There is going to be a joint TRPA Placer County pre-development meeting, which has been scheduled, which is later in this month, next week. We hope to really begin to move forward once that is completed. The Air Pollution Control District of Placer County and TRPA have also agreed to do the air permitting actions jointly, so that again saves time, money, and the ability to get the analysis performed. The county has more assets than TRPA in getting this done, so I think Tom Christoph's organization will be of huge benefit to getting this accomplished. We have done the preliminary steps of getting the EIR, EIS actions proceeding so that we don't have any delay to that process. On that note, once again the letter comes in and the chairman is allowed to sign that contract, our joint consultants will be hired and moving forward. We have public scoping scheduled on both sides of the lake. We'll do one at TRPA, and we will do one in Kings Beach in Placer County. We'll do one during the day. We'll do one at the evening so that we can encompass as many people as practical to get involved in that public scoping. And that is set for June and July. Don't quite have all the dates scheduled yet, but we believe we can make both those. We've already held a couple of community stakeholders meetings. We did one at NITRAC. Supervisor Montgomery and I met also with some of the environmental community up here, had a really good meeting. More are scheduled. We intend to keep doing this throughout the entire process to keep people's questions answered. Some of the immediate next steps, again, the environmental studies should begin here shortly. We'll have detailed facility drawings drafted sometime right around there or after that, which is this summer. We'll have a technology RFI to go out where we have now a specific statement of work and specifications to meet all of the air and other guidelines or regulations within the Tahoe Basin to both meet TRPA's and Placer County and EPA guidelines. And then we will take back that information and feed that into the EIR. And again, more community stakeholder meetings are in fact coming. Want to also announce that our website is now operational. Nice, short, tight name. That's what was given to me. Apologize for that. You know how the county works. Be happy to answer any questions or hear any comments. Thank you.
Can you shorten the name?
I'm not in charge of that. I will tell you, I've already had community members as far away as Walnut Creek and Idaho call me about it and ask questions, so.
That's good. Questions, Jennifer?
I really just want to thank you for the incredible amount of work and dedication that you've put toward moving this project forward, particularly the level of outreach that you've made to the community and your commitment to continue that. There, as there always are, a lot of concerns that people have raised about what this project might entail. And I think you personally have done just a wonderful job at sitting down, addressing those concerns directly, very head-on, not waffling, and just really alleviating people's fears largely. There are still concerns that people have. There will continue to be concerns, but I really am looking forward to continuing to work with you to get out in front, answer people's questions, and make sure we take care of the issues and the problems up front rather than be taken by surprise with a lawsuit at the end of the process. So thank you.
Thank you, and it is a joint process with the community.
Are there questions or comments for, right, yeah.
I just comment, thank you. I agree with everything Jennifer said, that you've done a great job in this. Your diligence and your outreach and what you've done has moved this to this point, so thank you.
Thank you. And now, I guess the board items.
You wanted to? Thank you. All right, then let's go ahead and take item 3A, which is one that we can go ahead and act on because this is not contingent upon the receipt of the letter to which you keep referring, correct? A motion, Rockholm, second. I'm sorry? Motion, Rockholm, second, Wygant, guffawing, Holmes, to approve 3A. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. Thank you. And then 3B and C. Well, let's go ahead with B first because it requires a roll call. This is the one that, or one of two that will be,
Contingent upon the letter.
yeah, that we will not be able to act. Okay.
Move approval.
All right. Holmes, you got the motion in. I'll give the second to Montgomery. And we'll have a roll call, please.
Holmes? Aye. Rockholm?
Yes.
Wygant?
Yes.
Montgomery?
Yes.
Euler?
Aye. All right, thank you. And then C, same thing, contingent upon the receipt of the letter.
Move approval.
Second.
I'm going to go motion, Rockholm, second, Montgomery on that one. And all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none.
Thank you, board members.
Thank you, Brett.
All right, let's move on to item number 4, Community Development Resource Agency Planning, Tahoe Regional Planning Agency Regional Plan Update Status. And just to be clear, as our planning staff comes up with their binders and gets ready to give us a presentation, this is an information item only. We will take comments from members of the public who might be interested in the update, but this is an information update only. Staff is not looking for action from our board at this time. With that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Paul Thompson with the Planning Department. Here to the left of me is Jennifer Merchant with the County Executive Office. Today we are providing your board with the status and with a status update on the concepts endorsed by the county in the TRPA Regional Plan Update. There is no board action requested at this time, but affirmation of these issues as you see appropriate. As far as a little bit of a background.
Let me do that for you.
Yeah. The TRPA is in the process of updating the regional plan, is making minor revisions to existing environmental threshold carrying capacities. Threshold changes are being made in an effort to incorporate updated science and changes in law. These are such as addressing climate change and risk of catastrophic fire. The regional plan is broken up into elements and sub-elements. They're in your staff report, but the elements basically are land use, transportation, conservation, recreation, public services, facilities, and implementation. And then there are certain sub-elements that are associated with that. Additionally, TRPA has drafted 4 alternatives to the regional plan, update scenarios for the analysis in the environmental impact statement. And those are similar to the ones we do for EIRs. Alternative 1 is the no project alternative. Alternative 2 is the alternative proposed by the TRPA staff and focuses on a combination of incentives, regulation, and collaboration to achieve the environmental thresholds. Alternative 3 is largely like the no project alternative, except that it allows for development to continue at a pace very similar to the ones that have been seen over the past 20 years. Alternative 4 takes the approach to decrease the amount of allocations and increase the amount of regulation, which is the best way to ensure that the thresholds are obtained. Next slide. Currently, TRPA conducts regular elements stakeholder meetings with local jurisdictions and interested parties. Stakeholder comments and suggestions are considered by the TRPA Advisory Planning Commission, and finally, agreed upon suggestions are taken to the TRPA Governing Board for action and direction to the TRPA staff. Now, the county's role in this process is to ensure that the county's concerns are properly addressed in the regional plan. Therefore, county staff participates in the stakeholder meetings. They also participate in the TRPA Advisory Planning Commission. Jennifer and myself are currently on that commission, and also participate in the governing board meetings. To date, county staff has participated in the first 2 of the 12 milestone meetings. The first one was on water quality, stream environment zone, sub-elements. The second was on public lands, recreation management, and the recreation sub-elements. The county has also submitted 2 comment letters, and those comment letters are in your staff packet. As far as the regional plan timeline, to date, the milestone meetings are anticipated to continue on through June of 2011. The environmental impact statement will begin here shortly, and projected project approval will be in 2011. Community plan updates of our own individual community plans will be sometime after that approval. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer, and she's going to provide some comments on the water quality element.
So now we're going to get started on talking about specific components that are being proposed as part of the update. And the items that we'll be discussing with you today are the ones that staff has reviewed and outreach to the community on and provided input to so far to TRPA. There are a couple areas still left to be analyzed by staff. So water quality is the first one. We've got 2 key concerns in this area as the TRPA's proposal is stated currently, and that is the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board regulates water quality and requires Placer County to have a permit and has conditions of that permit that we must comply with right now. And we're concerned that as TRPA goes through this process that they are creating a second layer of regulation in addition to Lahontan's regulation. And while they certainly have the authority to do that, we believe that it would be much more efficient if they streamlined that and really delegated that authority to Lahontan on the California side, so that the California jurisdictions didn't have 2 separate agencies that may have similar desires, similar goals, but go about those in a different way. So potentially putting us in a situation where we have conflicting things that we need to do with permits. So that's a concern that has been raised mostly by your public works staff, because they are charged with right now implementing that permit with Lahontan. And then second, I know that your board has heard a presentation by Harold Singer, who's the executive director of Lahontan, several months ago, and the total maximum daily load analysis that was done for the Tahoe Basin is completed, and they are working now to make allocations for each jurisdiction. Right now, based on what LaHontan is telling us is Placer County's share of that load, we believe that it's going to cost us $1 million a year in capital costs only to accomplish the projects that they're requiring of us. That does not include ongoing operations, monitoring, and maintenance of those projects. So we are very concerned that we don't have a funding source for this. We are stretched pretty thin. We are pretty aggressive, and Public Works has been very successful in getting grants for water quality projects, but those grant sources are not consistently available, and we're concerned in the future when we're going to be vying with other jurisdictions to try to access those grants. It's going to be very difficult. They've suggested raising taxes or fees or creating stormwater management districts, and because those need to be voted for by the people, there's no guarantee that those would actually be funding sources. So this isn't, these are two areas of concerns that we have highlighted to date. Under stream environment zone key issues, in the current proposal, TRPA is asking that at their discretion, any project, and that could mean a remodel, it could mean a large-scale redevelopment project, be required to do a site-specific soil survey. So as you can imagine, that could pretty quickly turn a small project addition into quite a complex project, and because there is only one certified soils scientist in this region, we can imagine that this is going to make it more difficult to do minor projects. In one of their alternatives, they require this of every development project that comes forward, and perhaps even on undeveloped land, that soil surveys be accomplished. So we have concerns, and that's, of course, in the most regulated alternative. That's not their staff proposal. Their staff proposal is that it be discretionary, but that also leaves us with a level of concern. In addition, in their proposal, they are suggesting that for sensitive lands, that when development occurs in sensitive lands, that right now you can acquire commodities in a land bank. They're saying that that should be based as opposed to on a flat scale like it is now, a 1-to-1 ratio, that ratio be ratcheted up depending on the soil classification. And right now, I know that I've heard from the Tahoe City PUD that they've got 2 sections of their Lakeside Bike Trail, which we have helped to provide funding for, that they cannot complete because there are no square footage coverages available in the land bank. So it's going to make that even more difficult if they change those ratios. So we're concerned about those impacts specifically for public projects that we are required to do as part of TRPA's Environmental Improvement Project mandate. Okay. Is open space mine too? That's yours, Paul. Okay, that's mine too? All right, good. I can do that. Under the open space and recreation, we have highlighted the following concerns. The staff proposal was that TRPA would have approval authority over all right-of-way abandonments, and the purpose for this was to ensure access to Lake Tahoe for the most part, but it was not limited to that, and the proposed goals and policies that they had put forward, so it could impact any right-of-way abandonment that the county would propose in the Tahoe Basin. We thought that was a little bit overreaching and recommended that that be eliminated. Currently, their board has given direction that that be eliminated, but that's something we're going to keep an eye out for. Also, the proposal suggests removal of all improvements out of the floodplain, and while that may sound like a desirable circumstance on the face, currently a lot of recreation facilities are in the floodplain because they're at the lake or at the river, bike trails, etc. Also, the utility districts have pump facilities in the floodplain out of necessity, and we really believe that's the safest way to keep sewage and other things out of the lake, is to maintain those facilities in those locations. So we have asked that that be revised. And there was also a suggestion, again, in the most conservative of the for alternatives, that bike trails be called just simply recreation facilities and not transportation facilities. That was a concern to us because that would eliminate transportation funding as a source for bike trails and make it more difficult to implement that kind of project. Now it's your turn.
Thank you. As far as Placer County's concerns relating to the land use element, one of our concerns would be that there should be consistency with the existing Placer County approved community plans. One example would be the Tahoe City Gateway area. This is the area that's along 89, just prior to entering into Tahoe City. It's a commercially zone. It has a number of different commercial uses there. The current plan area statement for the county allows for these uses. TRPA does not. So we'd ask that maybe there be some more consistency with that. The other issue that's of note is the Tahoe City Golf Course. The current community plan for Tahoe City does not have the golf course within the community plan, TRPA as well. And what we would ask is that this property be brought into the community plan. And the reason being that if there was a project proposed there, it would be able to be available for commercial fuller area and other types of incentives that they are currently not available for. As far as the process that we're going through, the county is recommending that there be a mechanism to change the transect boundaries and/or land use changes during our local community plan updates. Kind of the how this is going to work is the regional plan will be updated, and then at a future date, we'll update our community plans. It sure would be nice if through this process of the county updating our community plans, that if there were little tweaks to be made after the regional plan is adopted, they could be made, they would be in the regional plan and be able to be made relatively effortlessly. The county, as far as supporting some of their policies, we support their pedestrian transit-oriented development and its policies to increase height and density and allow mixed-use development into town centers. Some of the town center areas that are proposed are those in Kings Beach, North State Line, and the Tahoe City Community Plan, and this is a really great way to get the mixed-use development and allow for the densities and increased height. The county does have concerns about development status during the interim period because TRPA proposes that prior to updating any community plans, the incentives in the updated regional plan would not be available, and that existing community planning provisions would remain in effect. The county recommends that the regional plan update include provisions that address the interim period between the adoption of the regional plan and the adoption of the individual community plans, because they are going to be sometime in the future after the regional plan is adopted. Next slide there. County recommends that as part of the regional plan update that provisions for banking to bank constructed affordable housing units. We also would like TRPA to consider to remove restrictions on certain subdivisions of land. Currently, TRPA does not permit subdivisions of vacant land within the basin. However, if a property is zoned to allow for multifamily development, an applicant can propose and actually initiate construction on an apartment complex, and then they can go back and subdivide existing developed units into separate lots. The issues that we found that are associated with that is that it's very convoluted, and then at the end, it results in the same outcome of the subdivision of land where if it was just allowed in the multifamily zone initially. The other issue there is that the construction requirements for apartments are typically different for condo projects. So developer will start building an apartment complex, switch to a condo, and end up having to resubmit new plans, and in some cases have had to reconstruct improvements that they've already had to make. So it's sometimes, and we have seen that actually happen. So I'll turn it over to Jen for a discussion on TAUs.
Okay, this one is maybe a little bit more complex than some of the other ones, so I'm going to go into some more detail. And you actually won't find anything in writing in our comments to TRPA on this topic yet, because it had appeared as if TRPA wasn't going to address this issue at this point, and then we found out last week that they were going to. So this has been something that's been assembled fairly recently from your staff. I want to explain a little bit of detail about exactly what a TAU is and what the existing code is, and then what staff is proposing right now, which is what you see on the screen there. TRPA has developed an allocation system for selected development commodities, and these development commodities are allocated to commercial and residential projects for the 20-year planning period of the regional plan. One of these commodities is the tourist accommodation unit. A single TAU, as we call it, is a right to build a single tourist accommodation unit within a facility that is used for overnight tourist stays, like a hotel, motel, bed and breakfast, timeshare, and the like. A TAU is currently defined by TRPA as one bedroom or a group of 2 or more rooms with a bedroom, with or without cooking facilities, primarily designed to be rented by the day or week and occupied on a temporary basis. And while this definition may seem to limit a TAU to a single bedroom, because the other rooms are not defined in the code, the language has been consistently interpreted by TRPA to allow the transfer of that right from existing smaller units, like a 300 square foot motel room as an example, to redeveloped projects that result in units with more than one bedroom and as many as 4 bedrooms. So let's say a 3,000 square foot condominium or timeshare. TRPA staff is now proposing, and will be bringing to their governing board in 2 weeks when this issue is reviewed, that the definition be modified to limit a TAU to 1 bedroom. So if you have a 1-bedroom motel room, you can only transfer that into another 1-bedroom motel room. Based on analysis of significant available data on the subject, including the Institute of Traffic Engineers, ITE, it's called, manual, which sets traffic counts used by jurisdictions throughout the United States, Placer County staff disagrees with this definition and finds it to be arbitrary. The county maintains there is no inherent negative environmental impact created through implementation of TRPA's current TAU transfer system. After all, a TAU is only a right to develop. True project constraints, including land coverage, unit density, and height, already provide the necessary limitations to project size and scope, which are analyzed through the CEQA and the TRPA environmental process. That said, because of the lack of certainty this commodity creates in the development process for both interested citizens and potential project developers, your staff supports the proposal explained on the slide, that during the regional plan update environmental review process, TRPA analyze existing scientific data available on this subject and supplement it, if necessary, to create a flexible TAU envelope that provides certainty and also accommodates project context and market forces. So that's what we're proposing, what we will be discussing at the governing board, and would like your concurrence if possible. We have three separate slides, or excuse me, 3 separate bullet points here that talks about the 3 things that we believe the TRPA board will be discussing: whether or not to maintain the existing number in the Tahoe Basin. There's a finite number of TAUs. There's been discussion about changing that number. We believe that keeping it the same is fine. We also believe in maintaining the existing practice of allowing intra-jurisdictional transfers, as long as the sending jurisdiction approves of that transfer of a TAU from one jurisdiction to the other, and the receiving jurisdiction, through the project approval process, also allows those to be received. And then the third topic, the one listed on the top there, is to do analysis to confirm existing available data and not to arbitrarily set the number of TAUs based on just an idea. So that's something that if your board is interested in discussing, we would like some input on that. On to the next issue. This one will go. We skip past, oh, here's air quality. Okay, on air quality, the current proposal by TRPA is really kind of a list of implementation measures and not a proposal to create an air quality attainment plan. That's actually required by air pollution control districts in the state of California, and we believe much like what Lahontan did with the TMDL, maximum daily load plan on water quality, we should have a similar air quality plan so that the jurisdictions know what is their share of the air quality problem and how can we assess what sorts of implementation measures we should be taking, what's our fair share to provide in the Tahoe Basin to improving air quality. At this point, the staff proposal is a long list of things that are very difficult for us to analyze. So we are proposing that they do in fact put together an air quality attainment plan either during or following the regional plan so that we can more fairly assess what Placer County's share of that plan would be. On to climate change. We are currently supporting the proposal to have TRPA prepare a climate action plan as required by the state of California, and we would like to see that plan is consistent with Placer County's plan that we will be developing, as well as the other local jurisdictions, specifically on the California side, because we are required to do that as opposed to the Nevada side, which is not. Transportation. Our concerns about the transportation proposals right now, TRPA staff is proposing that a regional revenue source be generated through paid parking on public and private property. We know from watching what's occurring right now in the town of Truckee that just because you have paid parking doesn't mean you make a lot of money. And we do not believe that the analysis has been done that proves that paid parking will generate enough money to create the transit service that TRPA is proposing, which is 20-minute headways. We don't believe that we currently need 20-minute headways throughout our transportation corridors on a year-round basis. So we have a lot of concerns there because we don't think that we can generate the revenue. We don't think that forcing private property owners to charge for parking on their property is appropriate. One of the proposals we also have a concern with is the requirement to construct bike trails on all major transportation corridors, which is not defined, and also the requirement that they would be maintained year-round, again, because we don't have a funding source for that. And you can imagine what it would be like to plow through a lot of snow on a bike trail in addition to our mandates on or what we'd like to do on our county roads and our state highways. Currently, their proposal also requires that every public service project incorporate bike and pedestrian facilities. And while we think that's a very laudable goal, we are not sure that that's a realistic goal because depending on the funding sources and on constraints with right-of-way and that sort of thing, you might not always be able to accomplish that.
As far as Placer County's concerns relating to the noise element, TRPA is proposing to prohibit off-highway vehicles, off-road motorcycles, and over-the-snow vehicles from operating within 1,000 feet of residences and other sensitive areas and/or uses. TRPA also proposes requiring local jurisdictions to enforce those standards. As first responders to noise complaints, the Placer County Sheriff's Office expressed concerns relating to the staffing, the response time, and training, as well as the purchasing of special equipment, vehicles, in order to meet this requirement. Placer County also believes that there are already laws in place to address noise standards as well as nuisances. TRPA also proposes to prohibit development in communities where current noise standards are exceeded. The county staff believes that mitigation be considered rather than prohibition, especially for projects in redevelopment areas, and that will promote pedestrian rather than automobile activity as a major noise driver.
Okay, we're getting close. Last summer, Tom held, in conjunction with Supervisor Montgomery, held a couple of forums on Placer County issues in the North Lake Tahoe area. And out of those forums, it was clear that there were a handful of issues that the community had a lot of interest in following up on and providing for further analysis and participation on. One of those issues was the TRPA regional plan update. So we created a focus group that people self-selected, signed up for, and have been participating in since last November to work with us to analyze all of these issues that we've been discussing with you today. There started out with about 7 members. We now are up to about 15 or so. Includes just general citizens, some folks who are involved with business associations, as well as the local utility districts, and we've also got key subject matter expert staff involved with the focus group. So we've been analyzing these issues as they have come forward and have been coming back to TRPA, including in staff's comments, some of the issues that we've heard from the community. We expect to wrap up the focus group on the regional plan update this June, when the last of the items comes forward, and that's going to be on conservation. So we think that we'll be complete with that analysis process by then. We have brought our concepts to the North Tahoe Regional Advisory Council just for an informational presentation, and I think it's mostly been met with appreciation that we're reaching out to the community on this and then feeding that information back to TRPA. Here, some of the issues that were raised are basically the same ones, so I'm not going to go over them line by line. Same sorts of things that I've been discussing with you today. Specifically in land use, I think it's important that the community has said that there's really an overwhelming amount of data to review, that the information on TRPA's website is 1,100 pages long. And that's tough for your county staff to wade through, but we get paid to do it, so that's okay. Yeah. But we will be recommending that TRPA do specific outreach to communities to explain some of the concepts being proposed in layman's terms and to try to simplify and kind of distill things for the public. So on to our conclusion. We are seeking your concurrence that we're implementing your board's direction and so far providing the comments that you would see fit on the regional plan update, specifically on air and water quality, transportation, revenue and operations, noise, community plan consistency, the interim period between regional plan approval and community plan approval, and the tourist accommodation unit. So if you have any additional direction or input for us, we'd be happy to take that now.
All right. I suspect we have some questions and comments from board members. So we'll take questions and comments from board members, and we'll open it up to questions and comments from the public as well. So let's go ahead and start down here at this end with Jennifer.
Thank you. Yes, as well as sitting on this board, I am the Placer County representative on the TRPA governing board, and I'd like to just step back a little bit and frame what the governing board's role in this process has been so far. We have been provided with volumes of information, as Jennifer pointed out, and when we meet and we discuss these various issues, whether water quality, open space, land use, we take a recommendation that's brought forward, or a series of recommendations from the APC as well as TRPA staff. We then debate and discuss among ourselves, and we're doing straw polling at this point, where we're giving general direction to the staff on a lot of the issues that Paul and Jennifer discussed today. The important thing to remember is these are all in flux. We are not making hard and fast decisions, and that was a commitment that the TRPA board really wanted to be clear on to the community, that while we're giving direction through these straw poll votes, We reserve the right, upon receiving new or better information or science, to say, oh, that thing we voted on, sorry, we've changed our mind, we want to do something else. So this is an ongoing process. It is an iterative process. It's an incredible amount of work. I could probably spend 70 hours a week just on the TRPA stuff that I deal with. And I would say generally what was presented today is a very good recap of Placer County's position. A lot of the same concerns that Placer County has raised are shared by others on the governing board, particularly other electeds and governing entities. I'm not going to go through slide by slide. I'm sure I could make comments on each slide individually. I'm not going to do that today. Jennifer and I have had ongoing series of discussions about her role and the APC's role and the governing board's role and the county's role and the TRPA's role and, most importantly, the community's role in this process. I'm particularly pleased that the forums that we had late last summer and early fall have resulted in community groups and individuals being willing to step up and make their voices heard about how they think this process needs to work. One point that I do want to raise specifically that is of concern to me is the relationship between the regional plan update and the community plan updates. I firmly believe we could be doing them at the same time, that we do not need to wait for the regional plan update to at least start our process of community plan updates. Yesterday we saw a community plan outside the TRPA basin area, but a community plan from 1968. We have some other community plans in Placer County that are not quite that dated, but are dated and probably need to be updated. And I do firmly believe that they should be happening in parallel with the regional plan update rather than waiting. I think Placer County's concerns about not being able to get allocations until we've both been through the regional plan update and then the community plan update could be mitigated pretty dramatically if we made those things happen at the same time. So those are my general comments, and I really appreciate the amount of information you packed into a very comprehensible presentation, and I look forward to continuing to work both with the county and TRPA staff represented here today by Dennis Oliver through this process. So thank you.
Okay, other comments, questions by board members before we open it up to the public? Yes, Supervisor. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Explain to me, one's real simple and one might be more complex, but the thinking behind the concern, why is there what's the thought behind excluding bike trails as transportation amenities?
The purpose was to limit any kind of development in at least one of the alternatives. It's the most conservative alternative, so it really is focused on limiting development, including recreation development, and does not acknowledge that bike trail facilities also serve to provide non-auto access.
And then in TAUs, is there a broad concern that the existing broader definition, I guess, or flexibility is causing some problems, or is it just facilitating, is it the concern that it's also facilitating too much development?
Yes, that is exactly the concern you've hit on it. That there's a concern that by changing a single-room motel unit to a larger 2, 3, sometimes 4-bedroom condominium, if you will, is creating greater negative environmental impacts to transportation facilities, et cetera. And while it seems intuitive that that would be the case, actually, because of the different trips that people take when they use those kinds of units, whether it's a small motel or a large condo, they're actually fewer trips associated with those facilities that have more bedrooms and kitchens in them than the old 50s, 60s style motel units. So it sounds like that it would create that, but in fact it really doesn't, and the environmental impacts are limited by the other limiting factors that TRPA has on land coverage, height, and density per acre.
Of course, the discussion that you had, the proposal, your thoughts are that in the totality of all of the review, those considerations are appropriately addressed.
We believe so, and then we believe they're further appropriately addressed with each project as it's analyzed under CEQA and TRPA's environmental process.
Thanks.
Other questions or comments? Okay. On the TAU conversation, the TAU ordinance as it exists is used essentially as strongly as a redevelopment tool, is it not? We're talking typically about taking older blighted units, sometimes in fairly sensitive areas, frequently having been built without appropriate runoff capture facilities and all those kinds of things, eliminating them and then rolling them into new facilities that do have the environmental benefits associated with appropriate drainage capture. This is one of those cases where, yes, I can understand on the periphery some folks getting upset about a motel unit becoming a 4-bedroom condo, but by the same token, we do have other site restrictions, and it is something that is working. It is an economic development or a redevelopment ordinance or language that is actually working and achieving the desired goal. So I appreciate you guys are sensitive to that issue and concerned about what has been brought forward on the straight one-for-one. It eliminates the incentive of somebody to go out and acquire those units to a large degree. As far as some of the proposed requirements, for instance, the requirement that bike trails be maintained year-round, those kinds of things. Number one, the question I'm sure comes to every board member here, how on earth would we pay for that? I mean, we see snow piled 6-7 feet deep on bike trails right now. How on earth would you pay to maintain those? To what level do you have to maintain them? Because arguably you can clear the snow so that it's passable, but you really want to be riding a bike on it when you got ice and the rest. So, and then if you don't maintain it to whatever level is deemed appropriate, what's the recourse? What happens to us as a jurisdiction if we're not doing that? So I think you have done a good job of identifying a lot of the potential pitfalls. Obviously, anything that comes at us in the form of an unfunded mandate, I think the Sheriff's Department correctly identified their concerns about noise, and anything that comes at us in the form of an unfunded mandate, something that says we have to maintain something to a certain level or we must perform to a certain level or else, and doesn't have funding associated with it, is something that we need to be very careful about and take a good hard look at. Other comments or questions by board members before we open it up to the public? Seeing none, any members of the public wish to address the board on this item, just go ahead and line on up.
Morning, everybody. Is this working? Okay. Dennis Oliver here. I'm representing TRPA at this hearing today. I'm the campaign coordinator for the regional plan and also the agency's public information officer. Just a couple of dates to throw out, and first of all, I can't even try to respond to everything that's come up in 3 minutes, but a couple of dates to throw out in terms of public participation and whatnot. Our board meets on the 26th, which is next Wednesday, starting at 9:30 in the morning at the Chateau in Incline Village. That is when we will begin wading through all of these land use issues that have been elevated to the board level, and two of those are the TAU discussion and this question of when can the community plan update process begin as the regional plan process is going. We have a staff recommendation for seeking board direction on the TAU issue. What we're hoping happens is that we just have a wide open, fully vetted, fully articulated public discussion about this involving everyone who's interested, and that our board give us some direction so that when the regional plan EIS comes out of the chute in 6 months or so, we will have analyzed the different options. So we're looking for creative, innovative ideas to include in the environmental analysis. And then with regard to the community plan update process, we do have a proposal that would streamline the community plan update process. And depending on the direction we get from the board, it very well may be, if the board buys into this, that some of the communities around the lake who've been waiting to start that process, there's some things they may be able to start doing right away, concurrent with the community plan, concurrent with the regional plan process moving forward, and then by the time the regional plan is adopted, there'd be just a little more work to do, and you have them all finished around the same time. Let's see. So, just with regard to public hearings and whatnot, these milestone meetings have been monthly, and really for us to get direction from the board. When the EIS is in draft form, we will be out having public workshops and public hearings on the document on all sides of the lake. So you have that to look forward to also. So, thank you.
Morning, Mr. Falk.
Good morning. John Falk, Legislative Advocate, Tahoe Sierra Board of Realtors. Mr. Chairman, members, I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you. First off, I wanted to give kudos to staff for bird dogging this issue as they have been. This is a very complex and weighty discussion, and it's actually very beneficial to hear not only that your staff has their arms around the issue, but is advocating for many of the same things that the organization I represent feels are important to the next regional plan as well. I want to begin by just stating that the key thing that I would ask that you keep in mind as you look through all of the options and as you look through the EIS and the regional plan is that by all accounts we're nearing build out in the Lake Tahoe Basin. And so in so doing, we can't utilize the hammer approach and the mandate approach to getting things done and expect environmental improvements to appear on the ground. We have to have a philosophical shift. I hate to say it because it's very cliche, but we need a paradigm shift from the mandate, regulate, and mitigate paradigm, shifting over to the incentivize, encourage, and shape. Because what we're looking at is not new development, that's the de minimis part of the next plan. It's redevelopment. It's doing things better with what's already on the ground. And you don't get there by demanding. You get there by incentivizing people to do things better. And when it comes to the county, I would ask you to keep very close radar on front-loading requirements. Because, again, when we talk about incentivizing, if you are required to have X, Y, and Z in place before you're given any of your allocations, then that becomes not an incentive to get it done. It's de facto a punishment. And it also creates a scenario where you're not going to be able to perform up to standard, which then becomes self-perpetuating. So we would ask you in the strongest of terms to remain flexible, to keep the adaptive position, and to really, as staff said in relation to a number of issues, urge TRPA to stay at that 10,000-foot level, much as in TMDLs. Go ahead, set the bar, set the standards, set the policy, but then leave the implementation, the fine-grained material, to the local jurisdiction for implementation. Let each do what it does best. Thank you.
Thank you. Other folks want to comment on this item? Go ahead and please step forward at this time.
Good morning. Ann Nichols, North Tahoe Preservation Alliance. I wanted to thank Jennifer for all the work you've done on invasive species. There's Asian clam and full of milfoil on the East Shore right now. I was just over there 2 days ago. It's a mess. Never was there before. Anyway, also we really feel that the community plans have to be done with the regional plan. Otherwise, the regional plan will be used as a precedent for the community plans, and then we'll be just fighting that battle. One of the things we're worried about, of course, is height and density will be increased on over 600 acres in Tahoe. This building here is a great example. It's 58 feet high. Well, in the new regional plan, they're talking 75 feet high, 6 stories with a roof. This is, nothing should be higher than this structure. This is human scale. It's 4 stories. What are we going to do? We really need to watch that. And as far as the TAU issue, really, all those hotel rooms on the South Shore, we could be looking at those up here. So, and with the massing is a very big issue. It may be, it's not a panacea for the environment to do these massing and to ruin the environment that we're in now. TAUs get a 48-foot height limit right away. So it's more than just a development right. It's a height right. Also on the density, residential now can be up to 8 units per acre. Currently it's 1 unit for 10,000 square feet or a quarter acre. So then we'd be going down to 5,400 square foot lots per unit. This is a worry. Are we going to ruin what we've got here? Is real estate reliance the solution? Shouldn't we just enforce existing BMPs, which have never, only 25% of them have been done? We have terrible vacancies in commercial already, and office space. Do we need more of this? We need jobs first, I would imagine. Also, as far as removing sensitive coverage and transferring it around, South Shore has 800 acres of SEZ that could be transferred up here. What is the capacity of Tahoe? How much development, how much population can our infrastructure stand? We need to know these answers in the community plan update. That's what we're worried about. The only other thing I wanted to bring up, this TAU issue, we also have the bonus densities for affordable, and with the new regional plan update, moderate income housing, which is up to 425,000 right now, could get a 25% bonus density. They don't need allocations either, any of those units. So is this just a development issue, or is it really trying to fulfill a need? We have a lot of inventory right now in those price ranges. Thank you.
Good morning, Ellie Waller. Ellie Waller, Tahoe Vista resident. Not used to these things. Sorry about that. You're getting help. Hang on. There we go. It's kind of heavy. Appreciate that. Ellie Waller, Tahoe Vista resident. I'm going to do it. As Jennifer mentioned, I can speak loudly. It's okay. Maybe. Thank you, Jennifer, for mentioning the overwhelming material. The TRPA is putting out fact sheets. The fact sheet number 3 is for the land use element. It is 118 pages and lots of information. I suggest that this is going to be the most controversial area, and that the staff and your boards really pay attention to this. Under the land use element issue number 7, should TRPA limit the size of TAUs that are redeveloped? Staff proposes to amend the definition of a tourist accommodation unit to 1 bedroom with or without cooking facilities, primarily designed to be rented by the day or week and occupied on a temporary basis. Here's why. When TRPA developed the concept of a TAU, TAUs were mostly represented by the typical 250 square foot motel room. The code declares that no additional TAUs can be created without an allocation, but the relocation and redevelopment of a legally existing pre-1987 plan, TAU is not considered additional. Today, the motel room TAU is being redeveloped as 3,000 square foot, 5-bedroom timeshares. Some stakeholders are saying that something must be done, that increasing the size of TAUs may have a greater impact on things than TRPA anticipated back in 1987, and that more development than was ever intended may be possible. Other stakeholders are not concerned. TAU transfers undergo environmental review and must mitigate their impacts. At the Regional Plant Education Briefing in March of 2010, which discussed the concept of environmental redevelopment and presented the economic state of Tahoe today, one of the private sector presenters said, "The process of project approval takes too long, and the cost of satisfying the often arbitrary requests of staff is simply more than I am willing to endure. Just the question of the allowable size of the TAU is a serious uncertainty." So despite the lack of consensus on the way forward, there is a consensus that TRPA must act to resolve this issue. Staff is relatively certain that leaning too far in one direction will bring accusations that TRPA is killing the environment, and leaning too far the other direction will bring accusations that TRPA is killing the economy. The cost of doing nothing, however, is that the uncertainty will continue, and TRPA will likely be accused of killing both. Just one more minute. The new proposal here that the code definition of a TAU be amended to correlate with bedrooms would realistically mitigate the impact of the development of the above-mentioned timeshares. I would appreciate it if everybody could try to read this land use 118 pages before making a decision to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, how many more folks are interested in commenting on this item? I see this lady standing up, and I got 2 back there, 3 back there, 4. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Leah Kaufman. I am a 30-year land use consultant, ex-TRPA employee, and Tahoe Vista resident. I agree very much with many of the things that Jennifer and Paul and Jennifer have said, with the exception of what was stated regarding TAUs. As you may recall, the Tahoe Vista community just finished a litigation, unfortunately, that was $1 million worth, and that litigation was mainly over the morphing of TAUs. It turned into a coverage issue, but the beginning of the litigation had nothing really to do with coverage, as that was found out later. TAUs are very complex. When we did the Tahoe Vista Community Plan back in 1996, there wasn't any morphing of TAUs. TAUs were the 300 square foot motels. They weren't these huge 3,000 square foot residences, basically. And I don't agree that the environmental rules in place address it. And the reason being that when TRPA approved the project in Tahoe Vista, they didn't look at shuttles to mitigate the increase in traffic. Traffic from one-bedroom TAU is usually 8 trips per day. When you have a 4-bedroom house, you have more, because normally 2 families can fit in a 4-bedroom TAU rather than 1. So traffic is increased. The other thing that TRPA does not address in their ordinances is tree removal. So what happens is these larger units result in more trees being removed, more visual impacts. I mean, there's just a myriad of impacts that don't necessarily get addressed in the environmental document. And so I don't necessarily agree that maybe you have to have 1 TAU per bedroom. Maybe it's 1.5 or 2, but I think the subject needs to be more vetted. The other thing I'd like to talk about briefly is the update of the community plans. We're unclear of the process that will occur between approval of the regional plan and updating of the individual community plans. What level of public input is expected? What takes precedence? Do the updated community plans take precedence? I think the problem we have is that the North Shore communities are different than the South Shore. They're different from each other. Kings Beach is very different than Carnelian Bay. Tahoe Vista is different than Tahoe City. And we would like the county and TRPA acknowledgement of this. And that is why we have communities. Oh, I guess I'm almost done. And my last thing is run scenarios, run examples. When TRPA just says, okay, we want an 8 units per acre, what does 8 units per acre look like? What does it look like with a traditional hotel? What does it look like with a fractional development? Run scenarios for every use class, every category, and I think then you get a bigger picture of what the capacity in the basin will look like. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Euler, members of the board. My name is Pat Davison, Executive Director of the Contractors Association of Truckee, Tahoe. Thank you for this opportunity just to weigh in with our thanks also to staff for the tremendous job they have done pulling together members of the community. We have totally enjoyed and appreciated that, and it's helped me pass on information to my members as we go forward in this regional plan update. Something also I wanted to provide to you in the way of information relating to what Supervisor Montgomery said. There is a parallel study going on through the California Tahoe Conservancy to identify potential incentives that may help TRPA go forward as they're looking to redevelop and find private partnerships. And that information will be provided to the governing board and at some point incorporated into the regional plan update. So relating to what Jennifer said, there will be some new information folded in. We do expect to see the results of that study somewhat soon. It's a pro forma, though, on potential incentives that would be used to attract private development in the redevelopment scenario. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairman Euler, members of the board, my name is Wally Auerbach. I'm also a 30-year land use consultant here in the Tahoe Basin and civil engineer. I wanted to thank the board and the staff for being so highly engaged in this process. Frankly, without your involvement, we have absolutely no one representing the private sector interests and the taxpayers and businesses in Placer County. Frankly, at the end of this process, the only people who are going to understand how this code works are going to be highly paid consultants like myself and Leah and some others. And without your involvement at this time, we won't learn how to fix the mistakes that were built into the 1987 regional plan. We're going to end up with an ever more complicated, ever more unworkable, ever more unfundable regional plan. That plan was only possible because of competing interests, the League to Save Lake Tahoe on one side, private property interests on the other. The county at that time was engaged at a very low level. The private sector was represented by the Tahoe Sierra Preservation Council. Well, we have nobody representing the private sector interests at this point in time. There's a lot of fractional representation going on, but collectively there's nobody negotiating on our behalf. Sadly, what this process will likely result in is a settlement of litigation. That litigation hasn't yet been filed. The 1987 plan was a settlement of litigation, and that settlement is going to result in a compromise. I'd like to ask you to continue to take the most aggressive position you possibly can on behalf of the taxpayers and businesses of Placer County to ensure that that settlement is something that truly does split the baby and it's something that everybody can work with. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, members of the board. Alex Moralatos. I speak to you today as a motel owner. The Moralatos family owns approximately 57 TAUs. First, I concur 100% with staff's recommendation, and my sense is that this is an overreaction to a single project. And I'll give you a counter as a case in point. We rebuilt our lakefront property under the constraints of coverage, height, and density. We went from 32 units at approximately 300 square feet to 32 units at approximately 450 square feet. All of them are studios. Now, with the remaining TAUs that we have, and you can check, and I think that's an important point that was made in the presentation, be careful not to judge market demand. Fractional ownership, timeshares can come and go. Motel models in the past have not been that favorable, not been that economically feasible. However, one of the things that does make them important or viable, which this direction would have a diverse effect, is to be able to offer a distributed set of units to attract a broader market. So if we were to expand across the street, we would have studios, we would like to have 1 bedrooms, we would like to have 2 bedrooms, and a select number of larger units in order to draw a full market. If you understand that from a business perspective, you realize the risks that we're going down in this discussion. A building right is a building right. There are other constraints built into the land development process that helps us minimize the impact on the environment. Coverage, height, and density are namely the most popular. Thank you.
Thank you.
George Coster, Kings Beach resident. Morning, supervisors and staff. I just wanted to state my support for the staff's great work on input and recommendations to TRPA. Additionally, I'd want to urge you to support the following elements. TAUs, support the staff's recommendations, and I'd also suggest the creation of a bank and or some kind of tracking system for TAUs, perhaps the development of a pool of TAUs that can be utilized for the highly urbanized core and redevelopment projects where they're most needed. I'd also recommend, and you've heard me say this before, the development of an affordable housing unit like a TAU that's created as a pool, and that pool can be utilized by developers for the development of workforce housing throughout the basin, and then focus on the recycling of the blighted properties in the urban core. Pedestrian transit-oriented mixed-use developments. Again, recommend the support of it. It was the majority of the community members who supported this model through the county's place-based planning community meetings years ago. Furthermore, this development model supports the county's efforts to meet their requirements under AB 32, along with SB 375. And I know the county's working on their climate action plan and executing against SB 375. Increase the density and height thresholds to support the smart green development of urban core and recycle the blight, and provide the environmental improvements to meet the TMDL. And additionally, the pedestrian transit-oriented developments support the county's efforts to execute AB 811 and its Empower program, which I applaud you for doing. And then broadband was mentioned in the report. It's one of the missing elements here as far as infrastructure, and I urge you and the board and the staff to support the deployment of wireless broadband. This is a key infrastructure for the economic development of Eastern Placer County and the Tahoe Basin. Hopefully, the county staff can secure support funding from the ARA funds and FCC. It's about $8 billion out there. And it's a centerpiece, I think, for the economic revitalization and attracting businesses to our area. And then transit diversification, more waterborne, more bikes. I know buses are hard to support, perhaps some kind of auto sharing, but getting people out of their cars and utilizing alternative ways of getting around. Thank you.
Thank you. And as this lady's coming up, how many more folks were interested in speaking at this point? I see any more hands? Okay, looks like you'll be our last speaker.
Good morning. My name is Sherry Springer. I'm the Executive Director for the North Tahoe Business Association. And I, too, would like to thank Jennifer Merchant, Placer County staff, RDA staff, everybody involved that's been working very closely with our association's board of directors and our committee members to keep us informed on the issues. We definitely look forward to working more closely with all of you and all of the other agencies involved to continue to educate our communities and our members on these issues and bring forward some great comments. As supporters of redevelopment and representatives of communities that are in desperate need of some smart redevelopment projects, we encourage Placer County to work very, very closely with TRPA and any other agencies involved on the regional plan and community plan, and do whatever you can to bring our communities in desperate need of some very positive redevelopment projects. And we're here to help you do whatever we can to make that happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Last call? Okay, thank you very much. Bring it back to the board for any final comments or Questions of staff at this point? Jennifer, anything? Supervisor Holmes? Anything down here? Okay. All right, thank you for your time. The remaining items on our agenda are fairly evenly split between items that are more Tahoe-specific and other general business. So what we're going to do is we'll start with our 10:30 timed item, which is an East Slope item, and then we will work through the remaining items that are more Tahoe-specific, and then move on to those items that are just a bit more county-wide general business. So if you're interested in sticking around for some of the Tahoe items, they may be coming a little bit sooner than they might appear on the agenda. We'll begin with our 10:30 timed item regarding tipping fees, I believe it's Eastern Regional Landfill.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Durfee, Director of Facility Services, and it's a kind of a rare pleasure to be here today, not only not talking about a fee increase, but I get to talk a little bit about a fee decrease, so that's a real pleasure to be here today. I've got 3 specific actions that I'd like your board to consider. First of all, I'd like you to conduct a public hearing to receive input on a proposed garbage collection fee adjustments, read decrease, in franchise areas 2 and 3 as shown in the exhibits in the staff item. Secondly, we'd like you to adopt a resolution that authorizes the chairman to sign an amendment that incorporates these new fees. And third, we need to make a finding pursuant to the Public Resources Code that the collection fees are derived directly from the cost of providing service and are necessary to meet operating expenses required for the maintenance of service and are therefore exempt from environmental review. I'll go into whatever level of detail your board wants via questions, but in the interest of time, collection areas 2 and 3 include unincorporated Placer County from Colfax east to the Nevada state line. Our contractor in this area, Tahoe Truckee Disposal, ERL Inc., does collection service and then also processes the collected waste at the material recovery facility up at Cabin Creek and then disposes of those residue from that material at Lockwood, Nevada. Through a series of actions over the last couple of years and as the result of a decrease in the indices that we use within the contract with Eastern Regional to operate the MRF, there's been a decrease in the service component of their contract. The COLA itself went down by 5.38%. It was offset by a deferral of an increase that would have been due last year of 2.92%, and that ends up being a total reduction in the fee of about 2.46%. The end result to the customers is going to be about a 1.5% to 2.5% decrease in their collection costs, depending on the volume of their service, actually the weight of garbage that's included in their service. And as an example, a 1-can collection for residential is going to go down about 40 cents a month as a result of this. These actions are really a result of a couple of different things. First of all, we have a really good working relationship with the contractor, and last year when they had a very large increase due, they were willing to work with us to offset part of that, put it off till this year, which mitigated fee increases last year. And then this year, we had projected forward that we thought that there would be a substantial decrease in the COLA this year. That turned out to be correct, and so we were able to come up with this package. So it was actions that your board took last year. It was actions on the part of the contractor, and it was a lot of good work by Will Dickinson and his staff at Solid Waste to bring this about. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. I certainly would recommend that you adopt these new fees.
Questions of staff? Now we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. This is a public hearing. Any members of the public wish to address the board on this item prior to us taking action, this is your time to do so. And seeing none, we'll close public hearing, bring it back to the board for a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the chairman to sign the amendment that incorporates the new fees.
Move approval.
Second.
And may we go ahead and incorporate the findings in that motion as well? The motion incorporate findings. And the second concur? Yes.
I just want to thank staff for coming forward with a decrease in fees in this climate is unbelievable. So thank you for your hard work on doing that. I know it wasn't easy.
Thank you.
And I also would like to thank the Eastern County Regional Landfill and the folks who operate it. They're wonderful partners to work with. June 5th, for everyone who doesn't know it, is the area-wide cleanup day up here, and they have very graciously offered to donate dumpsters to various communities all the way from Donner Summit to Kings Beach at the state line and, excuse me, the town of Truckee, which is outside our jurisdiction, but they're just great partners to work with, and as well as thanks to your staff, I wanted to make sure they got thanked as well.
All right, we have a motion by Rockholm, seconded by Montgomery for timed item number 1, sub-items 2 and 3, the adoption of the resolution and the adoption of the findings. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and jump to the redevelopment agency items. So we'll go ahead and adjourn as Placer County Board of Supervisors, reconvene as Placer County Redevelopment Agency in order to take up items 8A and 8B. Thank you. And we'll begin with Jim, I believe.
Good morning. Jim LeBou, Redevelopment Agency. Ray James will be making the presentation.
Good morning, Ray James, Redevelopment. I'm here to speak on item 8A, and it's accompanied by a short PowerPoint presentation. Before you is a request to adopt a resolution authorizing the Redevelopment Agency to submit to the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, or TRPA, 4 preliminary redevelopment plans and an environmental assessment report required under Chapter 15 in TRPA's Code of Ordinances. The 4 areas are Kings Beach State Line, Tahoe Vista, Lake Forest, and Tahoe City Gateway. The Redevelopment Agency is just beginning this process. For all intents and purposes, the preliminary plans are applications. They will be submitted to TRPA to show our intent to begin steps under the TRPA Redevelopment Code, or Chapter 15. TRPA has its own redevelopment program known as Chapter 15 Redevelopment Plans. TRPA does not recognize redevelopment areas under California redevelopment law. Our blight designations, which are the basis for California redevelopment law, as it is for TRPA. However, TRPA has a much narrower definition. For example, California has 13 possible criteria for blight, whereas TRPA only has 6, of which 3 have to be present at any one time. In California, you only need to have 1 present. Currently, TRPA has produced 4 alternatives, which Jennifer and Paul discussed previously. They vary in benefiting our redevelopment agency. However, the TRPA staff preferred alternative 2, proposes major benefits for projects in a TRPA redevelopment area. TRPA has indicated in draft environmental documents for its new regional plan that it will provide special land use considerations and incentives for projects in TRPA redevelopment areas in exchange for acceleration of environmental public improvement projects. While the specific incentives and considerations will not be known until TRPA formally adopts its new regional plan, agency staff would like our communities to be eligible for whatever benefits may come from a new regional plan. By submitting our plans now, the redevelopment agency will be able to save tens of thousands of dollars in environmental and consultant costs. TRPA is allowing the agency access and use of its federal environmental consultants to satisfy the federal environmental and TRPA reporting. So we would still be subject to California environmental review under CEQA, but the dollars saved on the federal review could be substantial. Per TRPA code, agency staff working with community stakeholders, private owners, and residents have up to 5 years from the date of TRPA approval to create a vision, find a developer, propose funding, conduct state and federal environmental reviews, and submit to your board and the TRPA governing board final plans for approval. So we really are at the very earliest stages. What we're proposing here, and you'll see in just a second, are draft concepts. We are doing outreach now, and we will continue to do outreach throughout this process up through the next 5 years. But by far, one of the greatest benefits is the agency's ability to offer incentives to private developers in order to escalate construction of environmental improvements benefiting Placer County and in compliance with our agreements with TRPA. The 4 communities before you are all within the California North Lake Tahoe redevelopment project area, so they are already within our project areas. However, these 4 are completely separate plans. One is not dependent on the others to go forward. TRPA will evaluate each plan on its own merit. So let's just quickly go through each community. The first one, Kings Beach State Line. That dark outline indicates the current California redevelopment area boundary. The brown color indicates the area which meets the current TRPA criteria for blight. To the extent we could, we use TRPA's proposed new zoning system, its management preferred alternative, to pattern the Kings Beach State Line request, our request for redevelopment plan. However, we don't know if that zoning, also known as Transex, will prevail in the new regional plan. Here is Tahoe Vista. The area proposed is substantially smaller under TRPA's definition of blight than California, as you can tell by the dark outline of California. As a result of community feedback we already have received, we reduced the boundaries even further by eliminating many parcels with public ownership. However, parcels in which we have participated or received development proposals remain. We will be working with the County Department of Public Works to identify environmental improvement projects which the county can benefit from any accelerated construction. Lake Forest. Lake Forest is a very small community. It's totally outside of a community plan area. It was identified as an area whose commercial center, a roughly 7-block area, is in state of major disrepair and in need of public improvements. Community stakeholders concurred with the proposed boundary lines, that brown area you see there. Tahoe City Gateway. Tahoe City is somewhat unique. While it has undergone the greatest amount of public improvements, it is still subject to retail stagnation and must compete with nearby resorts for regional consumer expenditures. The declining residential base has contributed to the struggle to attract year-round employers. And I think Paul and Jennifer's comments earlier about what was happening with the Gateway holds very, very true here. The situation has resulted in conscientious retail landowners or businesses forced to survive adjacent to properties that are abandoned or in serious disrepair. Here we have received feedback from other stakeholders that have requested that we also look at the 64-acre site, that sort of triangular-looking area down toward the southern part of Tahoe City. We've been asked to look at that and to perhaps appeal to TRPA, even though it does not meet its definition of blight, but to have them look at it anyway, because TRPA has indicated that it would not satisfy their requirements, so far anyway. What follows next? At their July meeting, the governing board will hear these 4 preliminary plans. Again, these are very draft. We're very in the earliest stages, and we see them as applications for redevelopment area boundaries. After that, we will seek input from a myriad of stakeholders and regulatory agencies in order to develop work programs in each of the 4 areas. We will continue to go out to the various forums that are existing, to the community, to businesses and residents to get their input. And as progress is made, we will return to this board for approval for follow-up actions. And over the next 5 years, we will prepare and submit the final plans for the 4 areas. That's it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Questions by board members or staff on the presentation and on the requested action?
I have.
Yes, Jennifer.
I have a couple. Ray, thank you. Jim, thank you. I know that you have already gone back and addressed some of the community concerns that were raised in the initial presentation, understanding that this is a document that, while written in stone to a certain extent, is very preliminary and is very dependent upon what the TRPA does or does not do, and what individual projects within these redevelopment areas do or do not propose. There was a concern brought up in a letter to Ray dated April 13th from a number of concerned citizens about inclusion of large tracts of vacant land, which were currently unblighted and heavily forested. My understanding is those have largely, if not entirely, been removed from the mapped areas?
That's correct, except in one instance, I think, which was brought up in that letter, yes.
Okay. There was also a question raised about eminent domain and what rights the RDA or Placer County might have in relation to the Chapter 15 amendments and eminent domain. Can you clarify that?
Yes, the agency lost its powers of eminent domain in 2008. We should have, this board recommended that we not go forward with extending our powers, and they were expired in 2008.
So we do not have the authority for eminent domain?
That's correct.
There were some concerns about whether or not plan area statements, rather than community plan areas, could be included in redevelopment areas. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Lake Forest, I believe, is a plan area statement.
Correct. It's not in the community plan area. Under the new regional plan, they see the community plan being overlaid by the plan area statements, overlaid by the transects. And there's this overlay of land use designations that will occur. Lake Forest is currently served by the plan area statements, but what has happened, it was thought at the time in 1986 that there would be development brought in and that it really didn't need to have a community plan. However, subsequently, they realized that without one, they're not going to have the improvements that are needed in the area.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then as just a larger clarification, all the proposals that you are putting forward for these redevelopment areas are already, without exception, included in the existing California recognized plans. These are smaller subsets of existing RDA areas.
Absolutely, all of them.
That was redundant, what I just said, but I knew what I meant. There were I know there are a number of other people in the audience here who have some very specific questions. One that I think is very germane is, how will the public continue to have a meaningful voice and have their input heard in this process once it moves from this board, if indeed it does today, to the TRPA? How will that process, both at the county level, and I know you can't speak for the TRPA, but you're, I think, familiar enough with their processes to be able to comment generally, how will the public continue to be able to make their voice heard as to what does ultimately happen in these areas?
I can speak for the portion of which TRPA will have control, but I think Jim would probably like to address what redevelopment will be doing within Placer County. TRPA's, I think, public hearings don't really, at least we've heard from the community, they don't feel comfortable that they have the time or the access that they really need to have their issues verbalized. And we have asked in our preliminary plans, there is a section called public participation, and we've asked for extensive and comprehensive outreach to the public by a joint redevelopment TRPA body. Now, that's can be obviously interpreted by TRPA too, but we have requested that as a part of our plan, and they've left it in there, so I think that's a good sign.
So, as was explained, the TRPA has the final approval authority for the Chapter 15. However, we, the redevelopment agency here, are proposing it to begin with. So we're taking responsibility to bring it to the community and have a public discussion about it as it takes shape. So that will, I don't know today exactly how that process will occur, exactly when meetings will take place, and so forth, those details. But we are certainly committed as the project, as the process does take shape, to be out to the community a number of times with proposals as they occur. This whole process is going to be part of the regional plan update and will be analyzed through the environmental impact statement being done for the regional plan update. So that's going to take some time. And as we have more specifics, then we'll be going out and asking people to talk about it with us.
Okay. I would very strongly like to encourage the RDA to get someone posted up here consistently, year-round, at least a couple days a week, so that concerns that are raised in the community, and I've heard this from people who are very much in support of this proposal and people who have some legitimate concerns about it, that they would feel much more comfortable with the process if, just like the assessor's office or planning or the sheriff's office or animal control, the RDA actually has someone who is up here who is available consistently and reliably year-round to have these discussions. So I would really, I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but I'm going to continue beating this horse until it disintegrates into nothing. I think it's really important to have an RDA staff person up here consistently, reliably, year-round.
I think that's probably an appropriate conversation for us to have as we're discussing budget-related items in August. Other comments for staff by board members? Seeing none, this is not a public hearing, but certainly welcome any comments from public on this item at this time, if anybody wishes to address the board.
Ann Nichols again, Tahoe Preservation Alliance. Sorry to be up here and bug you again, but anyway, about the RDA map, and you know, there was an existing map, but there was no extra height and density associated with it, or the advocacy of PTODs, which is more height and density. So it's different now. It has a different assumption. So that is our concern, and I believe, maybe I'm wrong, that the golf course in Tahoe City wasn't in your map originally, or was it?
No, it was in our proposed Chapter 15 map.
The new one or the old one?
It's in our existing California redevelopment project area, and it's proposed to be
in the new one?
Yes.
What really, if the public knew that this had the potential for this extra development in Tahoe City, I really don't think they know in Tahoe City. There's those of us that are North State Line and in Tahoe Vista that are active in this, but really, if we could get that out, because as I understand it, once the TRPA says, okay, this is the map, it's the map. And then we just argue about how that gets performed in the development. Is that true?
This is the beginning of the process. What we're requesting from TRPA is within the boundaries of this map to begin studying it and come back with specific proposals. So there are no projects, no land use designations, no incentives, no environmental improvements defined or even proposed at this time. That's what we're going to work on over the next period of time.
Well, in the narrative that we read, we saw those things. But anyway, the cart before the horse is that the alternative 2 in the TRPA has not been approved. So to do all this according to that just seems to be an awkward way to set this up. I know you're trying to save money, and I agree, you know, that would be advantageous. But supposedly we don't know what alternative we're going to have. So with density and height. But thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, I see a couple folks. All right.
Folks. Ron Trebus again, and I would like to say that we very much thank what Jim LeBou and Ray James have done here. They have done a good outreach program. They have helped stimulate us as community members and community organizations to participate in this, and we as community organizations, speaking as a board member of the Tahoe City Public Utility District as well as a slave with the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association, are guaranteeing that we're now starting to all work together as far as organizations and citizens that aren't members of organizations in order to try to vet some of these things and bring them forward through the process that Placer County staff has initiated here to make some of these decisions, whether they're easier, but at least be able to be based on a clearer collection of information that we get. With the redevelopment, as Jennifer brought up so well, the TRPA proposal is within what has been redevelopment zoned areas for a long time, and that includes the Tahoe City Golf Course. so the boundaries on the opportunities that redevelopment create are still the same as they are. There is the potential of greater incentives within the areas zoned by the TRPA, but there still is the ability to do things under the California state redevelopment boundaries for businesses and other incentives that would create a stronger economy and better place to live up here. So we are encouraging that you do adopt this resolution, realizing this is a step in the process that we must stay in the game with, and then we encourage that your staff is allowed to continue to be spokespersons for us and create their views based on some of the ideas that we give them, which has already appeared in the proposal that they're offering to put forward to TRPA. So again, please do push forward this resolution so that we can continue to have the opportunities that will be coming forward with TRPA. Thanks.
Thank you, Ron. And I believe that your board prefers the term indentured servant to slave. Other members wish to address the board?
Good morning, Ellie Waller, Friends of Tahoe Vista. Placer County is asking TRPA to look at a preliminary Chapter 15 plan before the regional plan update. We are concerned that the proposed boundaries include hundreds of acres that aren't being really delineated between BMP improvement and what areas you want to talk about as far as increased height and density. If the RDA plan is based on alternative 2, which is the preferred TRPA alternative, which includes the transect zoning, why is the RDA including areas outside the current community plans for concentrated development? How does Placer County intend to involve the community with updating the community plans? Will each community have the opportunity to debate the imposed transect selection, if that's what the down select is going to be, if they don't feel that this is good for their community? In the new 5-year plan that you are developing for redevelopment that was last done dated April 4, 2006 through April 2, 2011. Some of the funds for the projects that have not been built or will not be built, like the Highland Senior Housing Project and the Tahoe City Marina, where will those new funds be allocated? The community has had a limited time to comment on this Chapter 15 proposal. The South Shore was very specific to the casino quarter, where Placer County North Shore we think is a too broad a scope. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? After Mr. Moralatos, anybody else wish to? A couple of photos. Wow, okay.
Thank you. I will be brief. Alex Moralatos. First, I wanted to state that I support and endorse staff's recommendation to the board today. I applaud the focus on investment in incentives. And the reason I am standing here before you is to make a strong recommendation that, and I think a lot of us will be focused on, ensuring that the incentives that are eventually put in place are in fact measured, tracked, and the results used to modify the plan as we execute. And I speak from experience. We were incented by affordable housing bonus units to invest in pre-development efforts that consumed a considerable amount of time, energy, and dollars, both public and private, and in large part because of the belief that that incentive would be there to reduce cost and streamline the entitlement process, which it did not. In fact, it was, instead of a carrot, much more of a stick. And so the passion around incentives, or the focus on incentives and the passion to measure them and to continue to focus on modifying the plan to achieve them will be critical. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Carol Savory, Kings Beach resident, and currently serve as the president of the board of the North Tahoe Business Association, which goes from Crystal Bay to Carnelian Bay. I want to endorse the recommendation today for redevelopment because I think it's important to make our districts eligible for the same incentives that other redevelopment districts have. hearkening back to John Fox's earlier comments about incentivizing the desirable behavior to help facilitate redevelopment in the context of conserving our natural environmental assets as well. I encourage you to move forward, and I would also like to say that the North Tahoe Business Association, in conjunction with our utility districts and other business associations in the region, look forward to actively participating and being engaged in the process so that we also can provide input as to the direction of the plan, in addition to the task forces that you've formed to date. So we hope that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
George Coster, Kings Beach resident. I implore you to please support your activity by Ray and Jim. They've done a great job. And I have participated in all the public meetings. I think it's been great and open. I also applaud the RDA's work on cleaning up the blight, the gas stations. I know you guys are working on a plan for that. This all ties back into our whole community enhancement programs as well with Mr. Brown's project. So it's all tied together, and I think that you're on track. Thanks.
Thank you. And was there anybody other than this gentleman? Cindy, and that it? Okay.
I won't try to move the microphone. Thank you very much. Maybe. Speak today. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Honorable Supervisors. Justin Brolia, the Executive Director of the Tahoe City Downtown Association. And if I may submit a letter into the record.
The clerk.
Speak to you today as the Executive Director of the Downtown Association on behalf of our Board of Directors, staff, and 100-plus business and property owner membership to unanimously provide support for the Placer County Redevelopment Agency's plan for Lake Forest and Tahoe City Gateway. As you may or may not know, on May 12, 2010, our board met jointly with the Tahoe City Public Utility District in an effort to outreach to our affected community and property owners and hear a special presentation from RDA staff. Thank you to Jim and Ray for coming up and making that presentation. In the audience were over 25 local business and owners, property owners, including family representatives and owners and operators of the Tahoe City Golf Course, in unanimous support for the map and the new RDA guidelines. There was unified consensus to support the RDA plan as recommended, as well as research options, although we know it may take some time, to include the 64-acre property, which is the magical white triangle piece that you see in the map, to meet specific Tahoe City needs, such as our snow storage and other parking initiatives that may fall down the line in the next 5 to 10 years. It is imperative that we move forward with the RDA plans for our community plans in association with the RPU, not after the RPU. In addition, we thank Jim and staff for what is written in the report and RDA's goals to improve the ability to impact the Lake Tahoe environmental conditions, increase the vitality of tourism and retail in the community, and support development of affordable workforce housing. As well as we support the planning staff regarding the RPU previously stated during Jennifer's presentation, recommendations on the paid parking, the support of mixed use in our downtown area, and the TAU definitions. Thank you, Jennifer, for beating the dead horse. We've used every stick we had. I know, to Steve's credit, his staff was here all last week. We'd love to see you every day. Thank you for your continued commitment and leadership to help revitalize downtown Tahoe City and the surrounding areas.
Thank you.
Maybe I can just say ditto to that. Justin's such a great speaker. I'm Cindy Gustafson. I'm General Manager of Tahoe City PUD, here to report basically the same thing that Justin did, which is our two boards thought it was so critical to hear this project and to reach out to our community. We sent mailers to over 100 commercial property owners and other property owners in the area, as well as email blasts encouraging people to attend this special joint meeting of the Public Utility District and the Downtown Association. Redevelopment staff was there. They've been in attendance, I think, for the last 30 or 45 days, holding meetings in Tahoe, letting us have that opportunity to learn about this. And we so strongly support their efforts and your efforts to continue supporting redevelopment in our area. We really need redevelopment. I think it's critical to our communities. It's really our only hope in the Tahoe Basin to see any meaningful new incentives. Our economic decline started long before the recent economic decline in the nation and the world. We were seeing these vacancies and the changes in our residential as property values escalated and people left the area. There were no longer as many residents to sustain our local community businesses. And that trend started a number of years ago. We need redevelopment urgently. The only thing we could ask is that we could expedite it some way, get TRPA moving quicker on their regional plan and the opportunity to start this. But we so thank your staff and you for your leadership and support in redevelopment. I'm also submitting a letter on behalf of my board of directors, again with unanimous support for your staff's recommendation. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board at this time for any final comments or action. Any board members have any final comments or recommended action? We are being asked to adopt the resolution authorizing redevelopment agency to submit to TRPA our preliminary redevelopment plans and an environmental assessment for the communities that we've discussed.
So moved.
Okay, I'm going to give the motion to Rockholm and a second to Montgomery. How's that? Any under discussion or under the motion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you. And then I believe we have an information item as well on the recent activities.
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to give you in highlights, an update on the status of various redevelopment projects and programs in the North Tahoe area. It's been a while since we've been up here with you having an opportunity to give this update, so I want to let all of you in the audience also to learn more about exactly where we're at with a number of key projects and programs. This is Tahoe Vista and Kings Beach State Line, our project area boundaries today. And so here are some of the projects and programs going on. Swiss Mart, located at the northwest corner of Chipmunk and Highway 28. We acquired that property a few years ago. There was as you could see in the photos, there was an old abandoned gas station that was leaking hydrocarbons and MTBE into the ground and into the groundwater within danger of going into the lake. We acquired the property, demolished the buildings, removed tons and tons of contaminated soil, have put in monitoring wells. We've already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars cleaning up that site. We're almost finished, but it's a process with Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board. We have to continue to monitor those wells, and we're hoping this summer that we will get word from Lahontan that the site is now clean enough for us to go ahead and develop. In the meantime, we've been able to install our Gateway Monument sign, which the community is proud of, as are we, and we are preparing this site, doing planning work and discussions with the Business Association and the community, soliciting ideas in advance of us putting out an RFP to get proposals from developers of what we can finally do with this site in the end. Eastern Gateway, this is that same intersection, and you could see there are three different corners where we have acquired property. This is the Swiss Mart. This is what we call the Eastern Gateway. It's about 1.3 acres, and this is the Kings Beach Scattered Sites Housing Project, Domus Development being the developer there. So this is a big focus of ours, this whole intersection where we've spent a lot of money already, and we're intending to see much more improvements coming down the line. You can see the photos. We've already done on the Gateway site, demolished buildings, also cleaned up some contaminated soil, and we also have monitoring wells, and we're working together with Lahontan on that site as well. There was a gas station on that site previously. We are completing that cleanup now. There are 2 remaining tenants, residential tenants on site. We are working with them, and we will be providing financial assistance for them to move, relocation assistance, that's going on this summer. We expect that to be completed within a few weeks. We will then demolish the remaining buildings, and we are, as I said, working with the Business Association and other community folks, planning for what we're going to say when we release RFP to get proposals for development. So we're, June 15th, I think, is the date we're targeting to have facilitated discussions with the community. We're going to be on site, putting up a big tent. You're going to be seeing, I think, advertised in the paper, and we'll be sending out blasts to the community and welcoming one and all to join us in discussion about what do we want to see happen on that site. The Everett property down the street from the Eastern Gateway is another approximately 1-acre site that we acquired last year with your approval. There are 2 purposes being planned for this property. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm going back there. The majority of the property is planned to be used as public parking. With the CCIP project coming in and with all of the redevelopment activity planned, there is a need for more public parking. It will be free public parking. We are beginning the design work on that. We have, I think, proposals for an design team contract out right now. We're advertising for that. In the smaller part, on the front of the property, we're planning to set aside a part of the property to solicit development proposals so that we will put a commercial building presence on the street so that you don't drive by and just see this big open sea of cars. It'll be more attractive and it'll add more life and vitality to the commercial district. Kings Peach Town Center, a BBLLC. This is a project you've seen before. We're still working on this. We're still, it's a long involved process going through TRPA and so forth. This was designated as a community enhancement project by TRPA. Commodities were reserved for them, and they've gone through preliminary planning. They're getting ready to start environmental impact statement, EIR. And we're hoping that there will be some scoping public meetings held in coming weeks on that project. Commercial Core Improvement Project, you know all about that. The point here is redevelopment is not managing this project. We are assisting it with $11 million of redevelopment funds commitment. Public parking lots is part of our support for CCIP and commercial revitalization in the area. These are some of the sites in the area, in the Kings Beach area. This is the Minnow, the Brook. This is, I think, is the Minnow. This one here, we have acquired the site at Rainbow Avenue, and we are with Public Works. Public Works is going to be working through the design in the coming months with the expectation to do construct the improvements for the lot to open sometime in 2011. Tahoe Vista Recreation Area Improvement Project, we're working with the PUD for North Tahoe. They have an existing boat launch and park area, as I think you know, at the foot of National Avenue. They are wanting to make further improvements to this amenity, and your board has approved $500,000 in redevelopment funding to assist that project. And this site is showing where a new public parking lot is planned across the street from the boat launch on the other side of Highway 28 at National Avenue. We're been in close conversation with the PUD and their staff, and they are planning for this project to roll out in 2011 for construction. Tahoe City. One project I think you're aware of is the Transit Center. This is a project being managed by the Public Works Department. The redevelopment agency, your board has approved $500,000 of redevelopment funding for this project. It's in construction this summer, so that's an exciting thing, a big improvement, long in the pipeline going forward this summer. Gateway monument signs, 2 signs in construction right now. There was a hiccup. It started last fall. We had the signs substantially constructed, but these top concrete portions here where the lettering will go, they failed concrete strength tests, so we had to have the contractor go back. We argued with them for a while, but they finally admitted that they really were inferior, and so they went back, demolished them. They've re-poured them now after the winter weather is over, and they'll be putting in the letters and just to do the final cleanup, and those will be finished, we think, within less than a month. The Y project, your board has approved $200,000 in funding for this improvement. This is where highways 28 and 89 meet, and these are existing medians. Plans are for further enhancing them with landscaping and other improvements, working very closely with the design committee for Tahoe City as well as the Business Association with input also from the PUD and others on that. The project is in the design phase. We're hoping for probably 2011 installation. Maybe sooner, but that's we'll see how quickly that goes. General business support. We operate different programs that are available throughout our redevelopment area. We provide assistance and advice and technical support for property owners and businesses throughout the area. Our staff has meetings and discussions with property owners all over our project area in all of these Tahoe communities on a regular basis, and so we're up here a lot meeting with these folks, and many of the main properties that you're aware of in this area, we've had sit-down meetings with many of those property owners and business owners to discuss what can they possibly do in the future, how can we help them. Sometimes it results in us providing commercial or facade loans. We also provide funding, core funding support for the Tahoe City Downtown Association and the NTBA. The most recent facade improvement project funded was the Brockway Golf Course, where this fencing is all new. It was falling apart, and we worked with the owners there, and this was recently completed in recent weeks. Housing program. We provide assistance. We have ongoing programs to provide affordable loans for housing rehabilitation and for first-time home buyers. And we have a new program, which your board has approved, launching with federal funding assistance, the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, where we acquire and rehabilitate and make available to lower-income folks foreclosed homes. And so all of those programs are active in the Tahoe area. We also have been involved in a few specific projects. The one you've heard the most about is the Scattered Sites Housing Project, Domus Development. This project, we are very hopeful. June 9th is the date that the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee announces their tax credit awards for affordable housing projects. We are very hopeful that this one will receive those tax credits, which is the last piece of the puzzle we need. We're working very diligently to get through building permits, relocating the existing tenants with financial assistance, and hoping for construction to begin this summer. That is 77 units in 5 sites, a very big deal for Kings Beach and the Tahoe community. You'll be seeing our budget for the next fiscal year in the coming weeks in I think, one of your upcoming meetings. And we'll be primarily maintaining the programs that you've already funded and continuing with those and holding some funds in reserve for future opportunities and needs. We've been compiling a list of wishes and requests from different community groups and different developers and property owners, and that list is growing and growing. We do have some resources that we'll be coming back to you to talk about how should we spend our money in the future responding to these opportunities, but we know that the list is much greater and the need is much greater than the available resources. And the types of things we're going to have to be taken into consideration are what is strategic, what is the smartest way to use our money, what will do the most good, and the basic principles that we use in trying to make those decisions are, does the project or the investment remove blight? Does it improve deficiencies in public facilities in the area? Does it leverage other funds? We really like to use our funds to plug gaps. We like it especially if other parties, whether they're private or public, can come up with, let's say, 90% of the funding and there's just a 10% gap, then we, ride the white horse into the rescue, put in the 10% and the project's able to go where it otherwise wouldn't be possible. And we like our projects to be such that they're strategic in the right locations and the right type of project, that they stimulate other investments so that if you have a truly successful redevelopment program, your indirect benefits are greater than your direct benefits. So it's not just that we are doing projects ourselves, but that things are happening in the community and other property owners and businesses and developers decide, hey, I should make some improvements too because this neighborhood is up and coming. And of course, improving housing is one of our key requirements and goals. That concludes the report.
Thank you for the information. Any board members have any questions or comments? This was just an informational report, so we're not going to take any questions or comments from public at this time. We're going to go ahead and adjourn as Placer County Redevelopment Agency. We're going to reconvene as the Placer County Board of Supervisors. There are two items left, one directly, the other tangentially, that affect the Tahoe area. Those are both under the county executive, so it's my intention to go ahead and take 5B right now. We'll have a brief discussion on 5A, which is budget. We will then adjourn for 5 minutes for a little recess, and then come back and take up our 11 o'clock timed items. So that's kind of how we're going to start laying out the rest of our morning. Let's go ahead with item 5B, the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association, an amendment to the contract.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Jennifer Merchant with the County Executive Office here about the Resort Association contract amendment. Wanted to point out that the amendment to the fiscal year 2009-2010 agreement with the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association before you for consideration today reflects three fundamental changes to the original agreement approved by your board last October. First, the amended agreement would allocate to the Resort Association an additional $680,890 in transient occupancy tax funds to broaden the Resort Association's scope for promotion of tourism and visitor-serving capital projects and transit operations in the Tahoe area. The agreement also releases infrastructure account revenue that was frozen in reserve in case further state budget cuts necessitated allocation in order to maintain basic essential tourist-related Tahoe services such as county-provided snow removal and transit operations. These assets will be released to the infrastructure account held in the county treasury where they can later be allocated for capital projects in the Tahoe area following the Resort Association's recommendation and your board's approval. Finally, the amended agreement also makes minor budget adjustments to allocate funds originally loaned to the marketing account and also makes adjustments to visitor support and transportation account in order to acknowledge actual and revised budgeted transit expenditures. In order to provide the services identified in the amended scope of work, attachment A3 to the agreement, the contract budget, which is cited in attachment C to the agreement, allocate funds to the following resource categories. Your action would today would allocate $193,134 for marketing, $109,304 for visitor support and transportation, and $378,452 for capital improvements. I know Ron Trebas, the interim executive director of the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association, joined by his CFO and Human Resources Director, Sally Lyon, and Marketing Director, Andy Chapman, are here in the audience. Not sure if they have anything to add, but at this time, I'm always happy to entertain any questions.
Questions by board members or staff? Seeing none, any comments by the Resort Association?
Thank you, Jennifer, and thanks for introducing the key staff of the Resort Association, along with our board members that are here, Ron McIntyre and Alex Moralatos, who you've seen before. This was a neat process, and it was a great one to get hung with a thing called interim and then get to come up with $680,000. So that was a nice first step. It was a good project and a good process that we went on, a real smooth process as far as putting together this amendment, and between Jennifer and I, who are a couple of the guru accounting people in this world, but we somehow figured it out here. And it was encouraging that, hopefully that this was a good precursor for now moving into the 2010-2011 agreement preparations that we will be taking on here. Another good point in this was that the county staff was able to see clear to returning to the traditional percentages for the distribution of TOT funds in the marketing, transportation and infrastructure focuses that we do focus upon. And that's been after a couple of year hiatus on that because of the economic situations, and we hope that that can now continue on in our further agreements as we, as I said before, move into year 16 of our partnership. So thank you very much, and the comment is we encourage your passage of this resolution. Thank you.
All right. Members of the board have any thoughts?
Move approval. Second. That's my thought.
Just not here.
Just got to be quick on the jaw there, Jennifer. We have a motion, Rockholm, second, Wygant, to approve the contract amendment. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, none. All right, and let's go ahead and jump to item 5A, which is budget discussion of budget workshops.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Holly
Evening.
Heinzen.
Yeah.
Good evening.
It's-
Yeah, you did.
It's true.
Good morning. I'm still there. I'm still awake. On that note, we're here before you today seeking direction on the budget workshops currently scheduled for August. Typically, the County Executive Office presents a series of budget workshops as a precursor to the public hearing related to adoption of the final budget. We've identified 4 days within the current proposal before you. There has been one request that we might modify that slightly. We believe that we can accommodate that within 3 days, should your board so desire. The content of the budget workshops as they're currently arrayed is we would provide about a half-day, half-morning as an overview of the county budget, where we've been, what our expenditure and revenue trends have been, changes in our long-term liability and reserves. We would then provide a presentation of the current budget and the implications for that within the context of our ongoing expenditures. And then third, at that time, we would address potential policy changes or adjustments that your board may wish to consider given our economic conditions that we continue to find ourselves in. On the following days, we would request that the departments have an opportunity to present their programs, how they are addressing funding impacts, and the challenges that their departments face. And then we would wrap that up with any final direction for preparation of the final budget and the additional policy direction that your board may consider. With that, if there is additional direction with respect to areas you would wish that we cover during that time frame, we're very happy to take that and bring it back to you at that time. And then secondly, the request was in order to accommodate the Lake Tahoe Summit on Tuesday the 17th, that the budget workshops be moved to the Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, which would be the 18th, 19th, and 20th. That would be subject to confirmation on your board's calendar. Otherwise, staff would just work to find 3 days that accommodate the budget workshops for you. With that, if there are any questions, additional discussion, we'd be happy to respond.
Okay. Board members have any comments at this point?
I'm assuming we're going to have the opportunity offline beyond today to touch bases with you about things that we may or may not want to see.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We would be very much there. The other thing I was just going to mention, with the state budget having such huge impacts on the county for this current year, and they're kind of out of their bag of tricks, we are looking at spending reductions imposed by the state. For them, that's about $12.6 billion of their solution. A large part of that's going to be impacting the county. So as much as we'll be spending the budget workshops identifying the impacts on the county, those may not even be fully known at that point, unless, of course, the state adopts the budget before then. I'll knock on wood on that. So anyway, there will still be some outstanding issues, but I do want you to know that certainly would be part of our conversation during the budget workshops, and we'll provide you a full overview on the 8th when we come back with the proposed budget of what the...
So then, contrary to what's in our agenda, we're actually looking at not the 16th to the 19th, but just simply the 18th through the 20th. Is that what I just heard?
Yes, that was the request.
Okay, yes.
Is that okay?
And I know that Heidi is in conversation with somebody on that, but I guess Mike or somebody. But
So the 20th is a conflict with you, and then Jennifer, I'm guessing you have something on the 17th. Was that what I just heard?
Yeah, fortunately, it's the Lake Tahoe Summit, and it's really critical since we're asking Senator Feinstein for biomass money that we be there.
Is it just the one day, the 17th?
My understanding is it's the Monday. There are events on the Monday before and the 17th, so Monday and Tuesday. And I can get further clarification on that, but I've been told to expect events on both days.
It is, if I might interject, it is possible that we could have the traditional workshops in 2 days, because the third day is more of a wrap-up and direction, and that might actually be a better, more thoughtful process to have that on a separate day, because it does usually require some kind of additional number crunching and following the board's direction on what to do on the final day. So we can maybe at this time look forward to the Wednesday and Thursday, and then look at the wrap-up of the board's direction and being a separate day.
Yeah,
We're currently, I believe, scheduled to have a board meeting on the 24th. We might just incorporate that wrap-up into that board meeting.
Into the afternoon of that day. It usually does take
Yeah,
a
and
few
we'd be
hours.
happy to do that. That actually does give us a little bit of time to wrap up the things.
Especially if there is additional board direction during the 18th and 19th, gives you a couple of days to accommodate that direction. Come back on the 24th. Okay, so is that right now sound good? We'll look at the 18th and 19th and then come back the afternoon of the 24th. I'm not hearing anybody say no, so your silence is implied consent. We'll move forward with that plan at this point. All right, we will go ahead and take a recess. We'll pick up our 11 o'clock timed item at noon, and we'll reconvene then. Thank you.
I know all about it.
Go ahead and bring the meeting back to order here. We will continue with our 11 o'clock timed item. Jumping to being presented by Becky. There she is.
Jerry Carter's my sister.
Morning.
Good morning, Chairman Mueller, members of the board. Becky Riggin from the County Executive Office, along with Jerry Carden from County Counsel's Office, for the 11 o'clock timed item regarding contract extensions for the provision of indigent defense services. The action requested of your board today is to approve and authorize the county executive officer to sign 2-year contract extensions with 3 separate law firms for the provision of indigent defense services. These extensions will run from July 1st, 2010 to June 30th, 2012, with a combined cost for all 3 contracts of $12,078,000. Primary in these contracts are detailed as follows. The primary defense service contract is with Richard Schumo and Associates in the amount of $8,900,000. The first level conflict service contract is with the law office of Mark Berg in the amount of $2,600,000. And the second level conflict service contract is with the law office of Balcom and Carbone in the amount of $500,000. The Constitution of the United States and California statutory provisions guarantee the right to legal representation for those facing criminal charges, juvenile delinquency proceedings, various conservatorship and mental health proceedings, paternity cases in which the county or state has filed suit, and various civil matters for any person who is not financially able to retain counsel. In California, the responsibility for providing legal representation for those who cannot afford to hire their own attorney falls to each individual county. And California's 58 counties meet this responsibility through a variety of methods that typically consist of combinations of the following service delivery models. Through a county department, where the attorneys and other staff are salaried public employees; through contract offender systems, where private sector law firms or sole practitioners serve as independent contractors to the county; or through assigned counsel, or what is sometimes referred to as a panel attorney approach, where cases are assigned directly to attorneys by the courts and are paid either on a flat fee per case or on an hourly basis. And due to the comparatively high costs associated with operating a county department, many counties, including Placer County, have determined it is cost-effective to contract with the private sector for indigent defense services. In April 2008, the California Commission on the Fair Administration of Justice reported that 24 California counties, or 41%, utilize private sector contracts for delivering primary indigent defense services. It remains the opinion of the County Executive Office that public sector contracts with private law firms are the best approach to obtaining constitutionally sound legal representation when they are awarded on the basis of qualitative criteria rather than on a cost basis alone, and when the services provided are subject to regular oversight and monitoring. Public defense services in Placer County have been provided through a contract model since June 1971, and since that time, the primary contract has been held by 4 different firms. The most recent shift in providers at the primary level occurred in July 2006 as a result of a competitive request for proposals process with an interview and evaluation panel consisting of county and court staff. The interview panel conducted a thorough evaluation process according to prescribed procurement policies to identify the responses which best met the requirements of the county and met the criteria set forth in the RFP process. At the conclusion of this process, the panel members agreed unanimously upon the final ranking and recommendations. On June 13, 2006, your board approved contracts for first and second level conflict services with the law firms of Mark Berg and Balcom and Carbone, and on June 27, 2006, approved the primary contract with Richard Schumo and Associates. The terms of those contracts allowed for 2 additional 2-year extensions, and the County Executive Office recommends your board authorize the first of these extensions today. The final page in your staff report contains a table that summarizes the monetary changes to their contracts, and they are as follows. The Schumo Law Firm would receive a 3% increase, or approximately $140,000 over current year funding. That increase is for additional clerical assistance, additional IT equipment, and to cover increases in professional liability and health insurance. The Law Office of Mark Berg would receive a 3% reduction, or approximately $41,000 from current year funding. And due to the fairly significant reduction in caseloads experienced in the second level conflict firm, the Balcom and Carbone contract would receive a 30% reduction of approximately $108,000 from current year funding. The net change across the contract system is a reduction of approximately $10,000 in year 1 of the extension, and an additional reduction of approximately $18,000 in year 2 of the extension. Indigent defense services are provided by County General Fund, and consumer fees for these services are collected by the county's Revenue Services Division, and they are assessed on an ability to pay basis, and they range significantly from year to year, but they average about $80,000 each year. And these revenues are utilized to partly offset general fund expense. The county administers this contract in cooperation with the Superior Courts, and we would like to acknowledge the significant time and expertise provided by Presiding Judge Alan Panesci, Judge Charles Wacob, and by other members of the Superior Court over these past several months as we worked on the terms of these contract extensions. Also in the audience today are Richard Chumo and John Richter from the Chumo Law Firm. And that concludes our staff report, and Jerry and I are available to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions to staff this time? Jennifer?
Becky, I want to thank you, and I really want to thank you for meeting with me in advance of this meeting. As you are well aware, a certain number of questions and concerns have been raised by an individual regarding the contract system generally and our contract specifically. And I, as I often do, went and looked at Google to try to figure out, what is a good contract? What is a bad contract? A lot of information out there, but I came across a Department of Justice document called Contracting for Indigent Defense Services, and one of the things that was most useful to me was they actually gave some recommendations for what is a good contract. And I just wanted to touch very briefly on each of those points to see where Placer County falls on this. Minimum attorney qualifications is a recommendation. Is that part of our contract?
Yes, absolutely it is and has been. That we have a provision 20A and B that call out the standards of representation, and that those are established by the American and California Bar Associations, and those address caseload standards and professionalism standards, and we reference those in our contract.
And we do have provisions, because I saw them in your report, for support costs for things such as paralegals, investigators.
Yes, we do.
Our current contract does not call out social workers specifically, if I understand, but again, that was a conversation that you and I agreed we could potentially have in the future when contract comes up for renewal again or rebid.
Yes, and there are models, and we do a lot of that type of work through Health and Human Services in collaboration with our probation department. So that service is provided, but we do it through those departments.
Okay. And then in terms of the independent oversight and monitoring, that's the judges that we're working with, as well as Placer County, I would assume, has some oversight and monitoring that's just associated with the contract itself.
Correct.
A question that did come up was workload caps, which would be, if I understand, maximum hours rather than caseload caps, which is a slightly different concept. Do we have anything specific to that in our contract, or does Chumo and Associates have anything specific in their rules?
Well, we do monitor those workload standards, and we do that through monitoring caseloads. We do make the assumption that those two are linked, and we do have those those guidelines called out in our contract, and we monitor those monthly, and we are well within, if not beneath, the guidelines that are established.
Okay. And then I understand that there are limitations on practice of law outside the contract, so this is our contract, and they're not off working on other things as
Correct.
well, is my understanding.
That is prohibited in our contract.
And we do have provisions for completing cases if the contract is completed but either breached or not renewed?
Yes, we do, and in fact, we had to use them in 2006 when we transferred the contract at that time.
Okay. Those were really what they, Department of Justice termed characteristics of effective contract systems. So again, I'd just like to thank you for taking the time to walk me through this, as this is my first, I know this board has already been through it, but as this is my first contract renewal along these lines, it gave me a very high level of comfort as to moving forward with this. The one last question that I did want to raise is, how many complaints, for lack of a better term, have we seen in the 4 years of the existing contract?
Well, I would say I've had a total of 4 contacts from folks regarding public defender services, and I do keep track of those, and we do make sure that if there are any issues, they are funneled to me, as I'm the one responsible for administering the contract from the county perspective. So of those 4, 2 were from moms whose adult children had failed to fully inform them of what their criminal history and activities had been. So with a few conversations, we were able to help them understand why things turned out the way they did. We had another complaint from a father who was concerned that he was being held responsible for paying for the damages that were caused by his son.
And so we explained to him how that worked. And then we had another recent case that came to our attention that I think we've been discussing that is currently under review and currently, I believe, in some state of legal review through appeal. So that would be a total of the 4 contacts that we've had.
And 4 out of roughly how many?
Well, they process about 8,500 cases a year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing none, does any of the representatives of the contracting firms wish to address the board at this time? No? So Mr. Finocchio in the back. Mr. Finocchio, were you here for this item, I'm assuming?
I'm here to listen.
Oh, okay. So you don't choose to address the board at this time? Okay. Any members of the public wish to address the board on this item at this time? Okay. I'm sorry? I just have one question for representative of the primary contract firm. So anybody
Richard Shimon Associates.
Thank you for being here. In preparing for this item, I talked with folks, including some folks within the district attorney's office and other folks that provide services within the court that have dealt with your firm. The only concern that was raised to me was the use of a contract attorney who has a spouse, I believe, who serves as a family law commissioner, and she handles family law cases for you. Are you familiar with this?
I am familiar with that, and I have discussed that with Judge Panesci as well as Judge Walkup in the past. I do not believe she appears in that commissioner's department. I believe she handles the family support contempt matters, which is a quasi-criminal matter where you don't pay your child support. Right. We do not appear otherwise in family law cases. So I had not heard back from Judge Panesci or Judge Walkup, despite having talked to them between that period, and I believe they feel it was satisfactorily responded to, and there is no conflict issue.
Okay. I have encouraged the representatives of the department that deals with her in that particular court to contact Becky and express their concerns in that regard with her, so you might be hearing back from her.
Be glad to deal with that.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could, before the board moves on with this particular item, whatever decision you reach, is a great deal of work has gone into this by all of the criminal justice partners, including the previously mentioned judges. Their extensive amount of time, probation, district attorney, the defense firm itself, contract updates, especially both Jerry and Becky have spent an enormous amount of times. That needs to go appreciated, that this is a very important contract in itself, not just dollar value, but the services rendered. And we deeply appreciate the efforts of all to making sure we're providing the best possible indigent defense as we can within this county.
Great. Thank you. All right.
Second.
A motion, Brock Holmes, second by Holmes, to approve these contract extensions. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you. All right. We will move on to staff item 6, facility services, A, B. Actually, you know what? I believe Supervisor Wygant should probably be here for these. So why don't we jump to item 7, health and human services.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Or I should say afternoon.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, or evening.
If you're
We're all over the place today. I'm Graham Canals. I'm the Director of Administration for the Health and Human Services Department. But today I bring before you our annual Health and Human Services Super Resolution. And the Super Resolution essentially allows us to bring one item before your board in lieu of 50-plus separate agreements. Both include revenue agreements and expenditure agreements that meet specific criteria. Those criteria include needing to be underneath a $250,000 maximum dollar amount. They need to be ongoing agreements that previously came before your board for a specific action. So each of these items you've seen individually before. They need to have minimal or zero upward change to them. So to the extent that they impact mandated child welfare services, they need to be within a 10% threshold of where they were in the prior year, And similar to last year, we anticipate that a number of these agreements will actually go down as we negotiate them and move forward over the course of the 10-11 year. This is, I think, the most critical point related to all of this is that your action today related to this item would approve the super resolution. There are 57 total agreements included in this, totaling about $4.5 million. And your action does not constitute final agreement or authority related to each of these contract items. There's a subsequent process to ensure appropriate CEO, county council, and risk management vetting. And we will also be looking to the current state of the state budget, which impacts some of these contracts as well, to ensure that to the extent that there is reduced funding for some of these items, that's reflected in the context of the total contract prior to it being finalized and negotiated. I should also mention that consistent with all of the contractual agreements that we enter into in HHS, and I think throughout the county, there is a 30-day out clause to the extent that the state comes back and says, oh, we're not going to fund that anymore. And we do have some agreements on here that were in fact impacted by the current 2009-10 state budget and where there was a subsequent reduction in their overall contract amount. So, for example, related to child welfare services, we have a contract that was $180,000 2 years ago. That's been reduced to about $156,000 and is likely to be reduced further when we get into 10-11, and there's a final state budget action related to that. So it provides a lot of flexibility, significant staff savings in terms of not bringing forward what would amount to 57 separate board items over the course of the 10-11 year, and I would recommend your adoption of the super resolution.
Questions by board members or staff? Any member of the public here to address this item? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion?
Second.
I'm going to give the nod to Holmes on that one. We'll give Montgomery the second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will now jump back to facility services to discuss sewer.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Will Dickinson, Department of Facility Services. At your last meeting on April 27th, we presented a considerable amount of background regarding the SMD1 upgrade project, which is a very important compliance project for our sewers in North Auburn. Given that we've already made a staff presentation and provided a lot of information, I think I'm just going to leave this to a very short summation of the main parts of the contract. We're asking for your approval of an engineering contract with Owen Somas, and the total amount of the contract is $7,884,500. That is really composed of two main elements: a design component, which is approximately $3 million, and a services during construction and post-construction, which is about $4.7 million. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding this item.
I don't know if there are any questions, but I'd like Robert at this point if you'd.
Yeah, thanks, Kirk. We've been meeting, it's about a couple meetings now, meeting on a weekly basis just to get an assessment for before we launch down the road to spending about $8 million on an upgrade, which would take us long distance down the road of precluding regional sewer. So I appreciate staff's time there. What I'd like to do, and I think this is okay with Will, and you can certainly comment, Will, but I think Will's okay with us approving at this point $750,000, which will give us a couple months to review the two alternatives sort of side by side as best as we can in that time frame, but at the same time not hold up staff. That's about as fast as they could spend that money. And so it wouldn't slow down our compliance requirements, Regional Water Quality Control Board. So if that's okay, I'd like to go forward with that direction, and however we technically do it is a matter of a technical solution.
let's have that conversation, because I'm seeing two different requests here to approve two different agreements. Will, were you speaking just to agreement number 1 and not to agreement number 2?
I was speaking just to the on-service agreement.
Okay. Okay. All right. And you believe that the approval of approximately $750,000 right now gets you 3 months' worth of running room while you have some more conversations?
That's what I've been told by the engineering consultant.
Okay. And they understand what the reasoning behind this is?
Yes, we've discussed it, and I intend to discuss it further with them and talk about the limitations and making sure that I get appropriate notice when they get to around that $750,000 level. And my thought was, if it's approved by your board, is to know that we have that limitation, monitor that ourselves, and if we need further spending authority, come back to your board for that approval subsequently.
Okay.
If I might, you're looking at the board to authorize a full contract, but with the further direction to spend no more than $750,000 so inform the contractor, and if you're approaching that amount, to come back to the board for further authorization. Is that the actual action?
That's what I had in mind, yes.
Is agreeable to agreeing to a $7.8 million contract, which may stop. And we're going to get that in writing, I hope.
Well, the contract itself allows us to terminate the contract at any point in time. So, yeah, the contractor's representative is here today.
I'm just making sure I understand, because it was a little different than what I thought I had heard, but that's fine.
And, Will, I want to make sure I understand. The $750,000 is to start moving forward with the upgrade,
Correct.
while we continue to look at the option of a regional plan?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Supervisor Holmes, any thoughts on this?
No, I concur with Supervisor Whitegame's.
Okay. So, Robert, you want to put that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, and Tony, help me out if but move that we go forward with staff recommendation as for items 1, 2, and 3, but with the requirement that the expenditures be actually limited at this point in time to $750,000, and that staff will report back to us as any needs to change that and the timing, so that we don't provide any problems for them in their timeframes and compliance requirements, or something along those lines.
I think that's subject to review and approval by the CEO's office and our office, just to make sure.
Second.
Sounds good.
I'll second that.
Holmes beat you to it.
Okay.
We got the motion by Wygant, seconded by Holmes. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to 6B now, please.
Yes, items 6B and 6C are also related to the upgrade project. In March 2009, your board directed staff to proceed with obtaining consultant services for the preparation of an environmental document. Our RFP review panel has recommended AECOM as the best qualified firm to perform the work. We've negotiated an agreement with AECOM. The document will cover Phase 1 of the project, which would increase the capacity of the plant to 2.7 million gallons per day. The cost of providing services included in the agreement is $279,125. That is assuming that we need to proceed with an EIR. If we can get by with a mitigated negative declaration, it'll probably be about $100,000 less than that. The cost of providing services, including the agreement, I'm sorry, repeating myself. Sufficient funds are available in the SMD1 wastewater treatment plant upgrade capital project budget for this contract. So with that, I'd recommend that your board approve the agreement with AECOM for preparation of environmental document in an amount not to exceed $279,125, and authorize the chairman to execute the agreement. Thank you.
Questions by board members? We have a motion.
Second.
Motion Wygant, second Rockholm. No comments, then all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All in favor, please say aye. Yes, thank you. That's how it works when I call for a vote, and we vote.
It's getting into the evening.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, really? Was I eating my words? I apologize. I will enunciate more clearly next time when I call for a vote. And item C, please.
Plant 1 upgrade and expansion project will require taking out low-interest loans from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund or selling bonds. If we wish to pursue a low-interest loan, which has the potential for saving millions of dollars when compared to bond financing, we would need to take the first step now. 2 additional approvals by your board will be needed prior to finalization of the financial assistance agreement. The total cost to take this first step should not exceed $40,000, which would consist of staff costs only. Therefore, staff recommends your board adopt the attached resolution to designate the Director of Facility Services as the authorized representative to sign and file for a financial assistance application from the State Water Resources Control Board. 2, to authorize the Director of Facility Services to certify the agency has and will comply with all applicable state and federal statutory and regulatory requirements. And 3, authorize the Director of Facility Services to negotiate and execute a financial assistance agreement and any amendments or changes thereto.
Questions? Seeing none?
Move approval. Second.
Motion Rockholm, second by Wygant. This would be the time that all board members would cast a vote, either in the affirmative or in denial. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. That completes our agendized items that are not part of closed sessions, so we will go ahead and
The board will go into closed session and take up the items on page 4. The only items still left to be discussed are the 2 litigation matters under 9A, 1A, and B.
All right, so with that, we will ask for the termination of all recording at this point and ask for the room to be cleared. Thank you.